Hello guys, this is Saruto Uchiha Storm here and welcome to my channel. Today I am doing Naruto Redemption of Dragon King. Please like and subscribe to my channel. Chapter 5, a long overdue conversation. When Wendy opens her eyes, she finds herself staring at a ceiling fan in motion. She gets up to see that she is lying on a bed. She looks around to see that she is back in her hotel room and judging by the dark skies outside, it's well into the night. What happened? I remember training with the skill drill until she recalled who she saw before everything went black. Odo-sama. She screamed in her head before jumping out of her covers and looking around her, but to her dismay it was empty. No one was there. She was there all alone. The girl felt her world crash and soon felt hot tears spilling. Who am I kidding? I can't believe I imagined my 2-chan coming back for me. I'm so stupid. She berated herself for a long while about conjuring that dream, before deciding to go outside and rinse off her face and take a night stroll. Imagine her surprise when she slides the door open to see her father standing there, reading a book in his hands. Wendy just stared in shock, hoping that this was not a dream and her father was really there. Oh, Odo-sama? She asked weakly. Naruto looks from his book to see his daughter standing right in front of him. He puts his books down and dismisses them into his pocket dimension, and slowly walks toward her. He bent down on one knee so he was at eyes length with her. He raises his hand to her, which causes her to flinch slightly. He slowly touches the back of her head before bringing her in for a hug. Yes, Wendy. It's your father. Wendy couldn't believe it. Her father was here. He was right in front of her, giving her a hug. New tears began to spill from her face, but these were tears of joy. She was finally reunited with her father after so many years. She began to sob into her father's shoulder as they continued to embrace him. Naruto felt his daughter's arms wrap themselves around his neck and hold on for dear life as if he would disappear if she let go for even a moment. This saddened him since he did not realize his absence had that much of an effect on her. However, considering she has been alone for most of her life like him, he shouldn't be surprised by how she reacted. She wanted her family. She wanted a mother that would be there to nurture her, raise her. She wanted a father that would be there for her, guide her, protect her. In a sense, she was just like he was when he was her age. This made him feel worse since he knew how much it meant to know anything about his family, even if it was a tiny bit. Sure, she had Grandini, and he was alive and visited on occasion, but that is not a substitute for raising a child. Yes, he was there in the shadows watching her, but being there also let him know about her fears and insecurities. How she wished her 2-chan and Ka-chan were there. How she longed to see them together as a family. It pained him greatly, but now he had an opportunity to make things right. He promised Hinata to be there for Wendy, and nothing in the entirety of Earthland or the other realms was going to stop him. After what seemed like hours he moved Wendy, so she was looking at him. Her eyes were getting red and puffy, her cheeks were moist from the waterfall of tears she spilled, and she was hiccuping a lot. If this was any other situation, he would think she looked absolutely adorable. Wendy. Hi? Why don't you get your face washed and get a change of clothes? We can get something to calm your nerves. What do you say? Wendy's eyes widened before nodding quickly and rushing to wash her face. Wendy couldn't believe it. Her father was actually here. And he wanted to spend time with her. She now had a lead to Grandini and the other dragons. She could even learn more about him, and why he wasn't there for her. This was an opportunity she could not ignore. And maybe, just maybe, she'll even learn about her biological mother again. It took her no less than 30 seconds to wash her face and get dressed and stand in front of her father again. Naruto blinked when he saw how quickly his daughter appeared in front of him. He had to mentally chuckle at her overexcitement. It reminded him of how he used to be once upon a time. Well, someone seems excited to walk with their daddy. I'm touched, he teased. Wendy blushed and began mumbling some incoherent words. Naruto chuckled again before ruffling her hair, making her pout even more. Well, let's go, the night is not getting any younger. The two then set out to the food center of the hotel. The pair purchased 2 large cups of hot chocolate. Wendy got one with cinnamon frosting, while Naruto got vanilla frosting. The two were sitting on the white sands of the beach, watching the slow waves of the ocean, and gazing at the stars that lit the night sky. The two sat in awkward silence, the only sound the two made was the slurping of their drinks. Naruto was enjoying the warm sensation his drink gave him as it went down his throat and into his stomach. It was one of the reasons why he liked hot chocolate as much as he used to love ramen. It was the warm sensation that he got as it filled his entire body. Although he hadn't touched ramen in 400 years, what can you expect when you're sent to a new world before ramen was even created? Thinking about his old addiction reminded him of his past. A past that he tried so hard to forget. A past that no child should have to endure through. All because of human naivety, greed, and fear, his life was filled with nothing but darkness and emptiness. He feels a tug at his arm and looks to see his daughter looking at him in concern. He realizes he had been releasing Ki for a brief time, and Wendy had been concerned about what was on his mind to cause him to get so angry. Naruto shakes his head to get rid of his dark thoughts. He releases a long sigh before looking up at the sky again. Wendy was glad her father had calmed down, but now they were in this awkward silence again. It was really weird, but it was kinda expected. How do you start a conversation with someone you have been wanting to meet again for years, but have no idea where to begin? Finally, Naruto decided to break the ice. I know you have a lot of questions, Wendy. You can ask me anything and I will try my best to answer them. I have so many questions, I don't even know where to begin. She replied. The beginning is always a good place to start. Wendy did not look amused by that response but sighed before taking the advice and asking the first thing on her mind. Are you really, Acnologia? The Black Dragon of the Apocalypse? I have lived for well over 400 years, my daughter. I have been given many names in all those years. Acnologia is merely one of many names I have earned. If you're a dragon, does that mean I'm half dragon? Not exactly. I became a dragon well after you were conceived and born. You're only partially dragon because of Grandini and becoming her Dragonslayer. But what I am is rather complicated. What do you mean? She asked confused. Naruto sighed before he said he'll explain later on. Wendy decided to go to her next question. Why did you attack Fairy Tail on Tenro Island? Naruto looked at his daughter this time. Originally I came to the island to kill Zeref. That black mage owes me a debt that has been collecting interest for 400 years. I never meant your guild any harm, but I wanted to see the strength of your guild. I saw that human I fought on Mount Zonia, plus your guild had 4 dragon slayers, so I was hoping to get a good challenge. He sighed before he shook his head and continued. But you guys were a lot weaker than I expected, none of you could harm me. Let alone scratch me. It was rather disappointing. Wendy looked down already knowing how powerless they were before her father. But. Wendy snapped her head at the but. I will say you guys have guts. You all knew that you had no chance against me. Your master knew this and that's why he ordered you to leave. But you ignored his plea and stood your ground against me. You all wanted to stand together and take me down as a family. Wendy was listening intently. In a way, I was happy. Happy, because the ideals of Mavis Vermilion were still held in your hearts. It meant that all she went through to create Fairy Tail did not go in vain. You all attacked me and even managed to send me into the ocean. That gave me a surprise, and did something that had not been done since my fight with Gildarts Clive. What was it? You guys ignited my spark again. My thrill for battle against a worthy opponent. Gildarts managed to do it for a moment. He was the first human able to do so in a very long time. And when I saw his guild mark, it piqued my interest even more. So I spared him and hoped you guys would come back to give me the same thrill I felt. And you did deliver, though it was short. It was the most fun I had in a long time. Wendy gave a blank stare. You do realize how much terror you put most of us? Not to mention the 7-year coma you sent us in. Wendy retorted. To be fair, I was not there to hurt any of you. The fact that none of you died or lost a limb should be proof of that. Gildarts lasted 3 minutes before he lost 2 limbs and got gutted. I fought all of you for well over 5 minutes and none of you got seriously injured. I could have done more damage than what I was doing, yet I didn't. That should prove I had no intention of harming any of you. Yeah, I know. None of us got really harmed from that fight. It was still a huge blow to our pride though. Plus you didn't even use your roar until you rose out of the sea. You had enough time to do it so many times, though I'm pretty sure me, the master, and Gildarts were the only ones to realize this. Wendy said. Yeah, that's true. Plus when I did launch my roar it was not at full power. I would say it was about 1/10. Then Fairy Sphere activated. To be honest, I only knew that it was a defensive spell. I had no idea it was gonna put you all in a coma for 7 years. Even if it did not activate, my roar would not have killed you all. Seriously maim or injure? Yes. Kill? No. I knew you guys could handle it. Wendy sweat dropped at that response. That's pretty sadistic too, Chan, she said. Naruto shrugged. It's kinda part of my nature, my dear. That's what happens to you after 400 years of non-stop killing and destroying. Wendy's sweat drop got even bigger and decided to move on to her next question before she got a headache. Why weren't you there when I was growing up? Why did you leave me? Naruto sighed before looking down and answering. Wendy, you must understand. I am one of the most feared and hated beings that has ever walked this world, second possibly only to a select few. I am the literal personification of the apocalypse. I am death and darkness in its purest form. He then cupped her cheek with his left hand. But you were so pure, so innocent and sweet. The day you were born was the most important day of my life. You were so beautiful like your mother. You were born without a hint of malice or hatred. You were my ray of light in the darkness. But after everything I went through, after everything I did, I soon realized I had no right to have you near me. I did not wish for you to be tainted by my darkness. Life on the run was not the life that you needed nor deserved. I wanted to give you the one thing I was denied when I was your age. Wendy looked curiously. I wanted to give you a childhood. That's why I knew you would be happy with that old geezer Rubel. I knew he would treat you like any other child, regardless of your connection to me. He saw you as a surrogate granddaughter and he felt he was doing me a favor as one of the few friends I had. I wanted to give you the one gift any child should deserve. A happy childhood filled with people that love you. That is what any parent would want for their child. To live happily and to be loved. Wendy was shocked at that. Did her father really think he did not deserve to be with her? That he did not deserve some sort of happiness? It would have been better if you were a part of it. She said as she looked down. I know just visiting on occasion was not the best solution. But it was the best I could come up with where I could watch you, but keep my distance so I wouldn't get my scent on you. Wendy then took her dad's arm and hugged it tightly. It doesn't matter what you did. You went so far as to keep me safe, just so I can have a happy childhood. That shows that you're not just the monster that the world sees you as. For that I am grateful. Even though you were far away, you always visited and spent time with me. That made me happy to know my Tu-chan did love me. So I'm glad to have you as my dad, and I do love you too, Tu-chan. Naruto just froze to hear those wonderful words from his daughter. She truly was a blessed soul just like her mother's. They both saw the good that was buried deep in the darkness. Just like Grandini, Anna, and Irene. For some reason, all the women in his life and his friends always saw the good in him, even if he did not see it or if he deserved such kindness. Wendy, you don't know how much it means to me to hear such words from you. But I have not earned the right to hear those words. But I hope from this point on to become worthy of hearing them from you. He said as he brought her into a hug that she happily returned. The two stayed in that embrace until Wendy moved to ask her next question. Tu-chan, what happened to Grandini and the other dragons? They all disappeared 14 years ago. You must know something. Naruto flinched at the question. Something that Wendy noticed. Why do you do that? When Natsu asked you the same question, I saw you flash through a myriad of emotions. You got angry, then sorrowful, and finally shame. Tu-chan, what happened? Naruto pinched his nose and released a heavy sigh. Something that was becoming a regular thing. Wendy, what happened to the other dragons was something that I did not wish nor did I want. They were my nakama, my family. But what happened was unavoidable regardless of what I or anyone else did. Wendy bit her lip and asked the question she was dreading. Did you kill them? Are they dead? Are Grandini, Igneel, and Metallicana dead? Wendy asked in fear. Naruto felt his heart shatter at his daughter's face but pressed on. Wendy, what happened was not what I wanted to happen. But honestly, I don't know. I know what I did to them, but I have no idea where they are. I did not kill them. At least, not exactly. I honestly don't know where they are. That is the honest truth. Which was true. He did harm them, technically killed them, but they escaped and he has no clue where exactly they went. He has a possible theory, but he was not gonna give her false hope to have it crushed later on. So there's a chance she's still alive somewhere? Like I said, that is a maybe. I can't guarantee it, nor deny it. Wendy sighed. It was not the answer she wanted, but it was better than nothing. Now Wendy, what were you doing here? I sensed your magical energy here, but I have no idea why. Wendy then explained how her guild had dropped in ranking to being the lowest in Fury. They learned about Grand Magic Games, and how it was the quickest way to reach the top again in no time. It was gonna occur in 3 months, which was plenty of time to get ready for the games. They came here to train, and enjoy some quality. She explained they had made some progress. She even managed to do the sky drill after just a few days, something that made her father swell in pride. She then explained the whole sake incident, something he scolded for doing, and reminded himself to get the other members for their stupidity for allowing Wendy to drink. She then explained how she went to get some ice cream before she came back to find out that her team along with Juvia and Levi left through some celestial magic. Now I am just waiting for them to return. I wonder what's taking so long. She was getting slightly worried that her friends had not returned. Naruto just facepalmed at the stupidity of not only her friends but the Celestial Spirit King's antics. If it weren't for the fact I am friends with that Baka Clover King, I would beat him for his pranks. Now I have to break the ice with Wendy. Wendy, I hate to say it, but I don't think you will be seeing your friends anytime soon. Wendy looked worried and asked what did he mean. Wendy, after I left you in your room, I checked the area and sensed the celestial magic. But the thing is that specific residual magic led to the celestial spirit world. The issue is that time moves differently in the celestial world compared to Earthland. Wendy tilted her head in confusion. How different is the time between the dimensions? She asked, curious at how different the dimensions worked relative to one another. Naruto sighed before he dropped the bomb. Well, 1 day in the celestial world is equal to 3 months in Earthland. Wendy just froze. What? I said you won't be seeing your friends for 3 months, which is about the time the GMC will commence. Wendy just stared with a blank, hollow stare. Naruto got worried and snapped his fingers in front of Wendy. Wendy? H. She screamed. You mean to tell me all that planning has gone down the toilet? What am I supposed to do? I can't get stronger on my own? She continued to vent in a cloud of sorrow. Naruto just looked at the spectacle of his daughter, while getting a sense of deja vu from himself and his queens. Wendy, I believe I have a proposition for you. This got the attention of the brunette girl. One of the reasons I came here was to ask you something. What did you want to ask me? Would you like me to train you? Wendy's eyes widened. Really? You would really train me? Naruto nodded. Yes, my dear, I want to train you to be the best you can be. I plan to work on your Dragonslayer magic. I also have some offensive spells to give you some variety in combat. Sky dragons may not be the best when comes to combat, but I believe I can make it up by teaching you to drive mode and maybe even Dragon Force. Wendy had stars in her eyes and was right in front of her father. Really? Yes, I swear. Wendy then breathed before looking at Naruto seriously, which made him raise an eyebrow. If I agree, I have some conditions that you must swear to uphold. Can you promise me that? Naruto looked at her seriously, wondering what could she be thinking, but decided he needed to do this to gain her trust. I swear a blood oath to the dragons, that I will uphold your conditions regardless of how insane or ridiculous the condition is. He swore seriously as thunder boomed in the clear, confusing several people on the beach. Wendy was shocked at how far her father would go but decided to keep going and raised 5 fingers. First, you don't hold back or show any mercy to me. If I am going to be strong, I need you to push me to my limits and beyond. I am tired of being weak, and right now you're the only one that can help me get stronger. Second, you tell me everything about yourself. And I mean everything. From the day you were born to your connection with Zeref and Master Mavis. Third, I want you to tell me about my biological Ka-chan. I deserve to know more about her, and what happened to her. I can't really remember all the stories you used to tell me. You are the only one that can tell me about her. Fourth, I want to know what happens between you and the dragons. What turned you into the so-called monster that the world knows you as? Finally, I want to spend time with you. Not as teacher and student, but as father and daughter. I want to have some time to know you and have some precious memories with my two-chan.
Naruto looked down contemplating the requests. The requests were simpler than he expected, but they were gonna be open wounds he desperately tried to forget, but he couldn't back out now. Some skeletons were gonna come out and he needed to accept it. He looked up at his daughter with unwavering eyes. I swear to uphold those conditions to the best of my ability. You have my word as a dragon. Wendy nodded before beaming a smile at him that made him chuckle. Alright, Naruto said as he stood up and looked at the dark horizon. Go pack your stuff and we can. He didn't even finish before Wendy bolted to her hotel room to get her belongings. It took her less than 5 minutes to get her things, leave a letter for her friends, and come back to the beach. Naruto had to wonder if Wendy inherited Minato's Hirishin in her blood. He shook his head in amusement. He lifted his arm forward and a black and violet portal opened in front of the duo. He looked at his daughter. Ready? She nodded. Let's go. The two entered the portal and it disappeared into the night as if it was never there. Unknown location. When Wendy gets her bearing, she sees herself surrounded by a forest. However, she noticed something odd with the vegetation around her. The grass was a dark green color, the trees were black in color and covered in blood, and the red leaves and the bushes were also of similar color. She then looked up to see that the sky was not nighttime anymore, but was now a blood-red sky. She could even see blue and yellow lightning soaring through the sky. Even the air tasted differently. It was heavier and had an odd flavor to it. Overall, she was getting odd vibes from her surroundings. Where had her father taken her? She jumps when she feels a hand on her shoulder. She looks to see her father looking at her. I can see that the environment is having an effect on you. When it's your first time visiting, this place can be overwhelming in a sense, he said. To-san, where have you taken me? Naruto then looked forward with a sense of nostalgia in his eyes. This place is special to me and several dragons. It's called the Bloody Forest for the unique coloring of the vegetation. It's one of my favorite places to come to within the Makai. Wendy was frozen when she heard that. Did you say Makai? She asked. Naruto nodded. Yes. Makai, Demon World, Underworld, Netherworld, Niflheim, Reverse World, Distortion World, and more commonly, Hell. All of these names represent a specific area, and when you take all these places together, you get the hell of this world. This place is one of many ruled by the death dragon, Giratina. Most dragons use this place to isolate themselves so they can train themselves without having to worry about collateral damage to unsuspecting victims in the vicinity. Only dragons or extraordinary mages are capable of finding it and actually getting in, and the number of mages that know about this place is very small. I guess you could call it our version of Tenro. Wendy looked around in complete awe and wonder. She never thought that the so-called original homeland of demons, devils would be controlled by the dragons. Then again she remembered that Grandini said that the dragons were one of the first beings born from within the universe and they mold it into what it is today. So it's not too surprising one of them took refuge in hell as their domain. To-san, why did you bring me here? She asked. Naruto smirked. I brought you here for our little training camp for several reasons. One is so we will not be interrupted by anyone. Like I said, this place is really isolated from anyone or anything, so the odds of meeting someone here are really unlikely. Meaning we can go all out with our training. Most importantly, like the celestial spirit world, time flows differently here. However, it's opposite to how the celestial spirit world works. 1 day in Earthland is equal to 4 days here. So training for 3 months is equivalent to 1 year here. Wendy was seeing stars. This was a perfect chance to really buckle down and train her butt off. Plus she will have someone that will push her to her limits, and truly make her strong. So how is this training regiment going to work? Naruto looked thoughtful for a moment. First I will evaluate your skills. After I see all of your techniques, I will know how to train you. However, I already have some fields that I will work with you on. Wendy looked curiously at her father. What exactly will you help me in? She asked. Well, as I said, one of the things that I want to help you in is with your Dragonslayer's magic. Specifically, Drive Mode and possibly Dragon Force. Since Sky Dragon Slayer magic is not really combat heavy, I will help you get more offensive magics for you to use along with the transformations. In the physical aspects, I will help improve your speed, physical strength, sensory capabilities, and finally your hand-to-hand combat so you have something to fall back on if you don't have any magical power available to you. Wendy nodded, seeing the logic in her father's ideas. But then she felt the hairs at the back of her neck rise in fear at the very sadistic and evil smile on Naruto's face. But make no mistake, my Chibiheim. I will make you train to the ground. You will sweat, you will bleed, you will cry, and I will laugh. You will know pain. I will make sure of that. Naruto said, chuckling evilly. Wendy was now wondering what she had gotten herself into. She gulped before staring back defiantly. I am not afraid, To-san, she said with conviction. To her horror, her father's sinister smile seemed to increase even more, and it began to get worse as he began to chuckle evilly. You will be my daughter. You will be. He replied, chuckling evilly even more. Yup, Wendy was definitely wondering what she had gotten herself into. Chapter 6, Learning about a father's past. Wham. Wendy grunted as she skidded across the ground. She was panting heavily from the workout her father was giving her. Her dress was in tatters, she had several cuts and bruises all over her, and she was bleeding from several places around her body. If she were to look around, she could see her blood spilled all around the training field they were using. Wendy was currently in a spar with her father as the last part of her workout for the day. Though, workout would be a huge understatement for the regiment he created for her. When Naruto said he would make her suffer, he was not joking. The schedule he created was really something only the devil himself could create. Her schedule went as follows. 5 to 5:30 a.m., wake up, have breakfast, and do warm-up exercises. 5:30 to 6:30 a.m., 10 laps around the perimeter they trained in. 7:30 to 9:30 a.m., dodge rocks or other projectiles as they were thrown at her. 9:30 to 10:30 a.m., climbing up jacked walls and at times dodging projectiles. 10:30 to 11 a.m., lunch break. 11:30 to 12:30 p.m., balancing on her hands or feet on tiny platforms. 12:30 to 3:30 p.m., working on her flexibility and acrobatics. 3:30 to 6:30 p.m., magical control, magical reserve training, and finally creating and practicing new attacks. 6:30 to 9:30 p.m., heavy sparring against her father. 9:30 to 10:30 p.m., dinner, and finally some relaxation, and then sleep. Needless to say, the first few days were utter hell for the poor little Dragonslayer. Her father was a real sadistic monster and he had no problem showing it to her. He said he would not hold back and push her to the edge, and oh boy was he proving he would keep that promise. She sweat, she bleed, and she cried as she was cut, bruised, and had her bones broken. That was the daily routine for the last few months. Despite all that, she persevered throughout all it and kept pushing herself harder. No matter how hard she was pushed down, she would stand back up again and challenge her father once more. Wendy, a voice called. She looked up to see her father relax from his fighting stance. You can relax. We're finished for the day. Wendy sighed before clasping herself on the ground, exhausted. Naruto walked over to see the poor girl was already asleep due to her exhaustion. Naruto couldn't help but look at his daughter with pride. While he did not pull his punches, he was worried he was pushing Wendy too far. However, he was surprised by the sheer determination that his daughter showed him. No matter how hard he hit her, she just got back up and was ready for more punishment. Honestly, he couldn't be more proud. While she lacked the strength of a dragon, she made it that up by having the heart of one. Naruto then outstretched his arm with his palm opened out. Suddenly all the blood spilled, basically, all Wendy's began collecting into his palm until a sphere the size of a baseball was in his hand. He licks his lips in anticipation before opening his mouth and devouring the ball of blood. He sighs as the delicious taste of cinnamon and honey went down his throat. Naruto looks down back at Wendy and chuckles when he remembers the first time he did this in front of Wendy. It was really entertaining. Flashback to a few weeks ago. Www what? How did you do that? Wendy asked as she saw her father drink her blood like it was just any ordinary fluid to drink. The poor girl looked like she was gonna blow a few fuses in her head. Naruto looked at her before chuckling in amusement. That's right. I haven't told you what I am. Guess this is as good a time as any, I suppose. He mused to himself before refocusing on his daughter. Remember when I told you that my biology was rather complicated when you asked if you were a part dragon, because of me? Wendy nodded. Well, to answer your question from back then, the most basic way to look at me is as a hybrid. I am half devil, demon and half dragon. Wendy looked up in surprise. Her father was a demon dragon. That would explain why some of the books she read about her father called him a demon or monster that rose from the pits of the heel. Ironic, considering where she is now. But then a thought crossed her mind. Is that why you're called the last demon from the books of Zeref? You're a devil dragon? Is that why you want to kill Zeref? Because he made you part demon. Naruto just facepalmed. For Kami's sake, you have one alliance with that black mage, and it sticks to you for the rest of your existence. He looked at his daughter. To answer your question, yes, Zeref was the one to turn me into a demon dragon, and that is part of the reason I want to kill Zeref. My reason for wanting to kill him is more of what happened after he turned me and not the initial transformation. Wendy looked at him curiously. What do you mean? Naruto sighed before looking at her sadly. What I mean is that after I was turned into a demon, I lost all control of my body, and I became a mindless beast. This was made even worse when I went into my dragon form. I slaughtered and destroyed everything in my line of sight. Nothing was safe from my wrath. Friend or foe, it didn't matter. I killed them all. By the time I regained my senses, it was far too late. My brethren were all killed. My father was dead at my hands. My wife was gone, you had disappeared, Zeref was gone, and the dragon race was done to a trickle. The fighting did not end in a bang, but a whimper. Wendy looked at her father sadly, but there was one question bugging her. Why did you do it? Why did you seek Zeref out for help? Did you just want more power? Naruto shook his head. No, I did not do it just for power. At the time, believe it or not, Zeref was an ally of mine and the dragons. In fact, I could almost call him my friend. Wendy's jaw just dropped in shock. What? Naruto nodded. That's even more of a reason why I want to kill him. The worst thing anyone can do is to backstab their comrade. And in my eyes, Zeref did that to me. Because of him, I was cursed with these powers.
All I wanted was the power to protect you and the other
dragons, but that backfired spectacularly. Now thinking back, I wished I had backed off when he warned me of the dangers, but I was too stubborn to listen. So I am just as much to blame as he is. Wendy looked at her father in pity. All he wanted to do was protect those important to him, but all that seemed to happen was that everything was taken away from him. And the sad part was that it was done by his own two hands. Wendy then asked something that had been bugging her, "2-chan, what type of demon are you?" Naruto looked thoughtfully before answering, "Well, that's just it. My demon half is kinda weird." Wendy looked confused. "What do you mean?" Naruto sighed. "I mean that the demon that was implanted in me did not really have a species or type. It was just an entity of darkness, and that's why it had a profound effect on me." He saw the confused look on his daughter's face, so he elaborated. "You see, Wendy, darkness as a concept and as an element is old. As in ancient, it has been here since the beginning of the universe. Before the universe was born there was only darkness. So the universe was born from it. That makes it very powerful, but also very dangerous. The reason being that darkness is a very volatile power and is very susceptible to negative emotions. At the time, I had a lot of anger inside of me. Anger that I had lost myself to on a number of occasions. So when the darkness demon was implanted into me, it did power up all of my abilities. It also made the bad parts of me even worse. My anger went completely out of control and I could not contain it, and you know the result." Wendy then asked why did he say his biology was rather complicated since he sounded so simple. Naruto elaborated. "The thing is, one of my abilities of mine was the ability to steal and absorb souls. This gave me the ability to use the abilities of the ones I had absorbed. The thing was that the darkness demon power made it so I also received some of the properties of the souls I had absorbed. Remember, I have been alive for 400 years, and I have eaten a lot of souls. Not just the souls of humans and dragons, but the souls of other demons like vampires, hollow werewolves, devils, high-level demons, incubi, succubi, etc. So I gained many of their properties and abilities. The most prominent one was probably the vampire. I think the reason behind that is because of their ability to absorb the vitality of others by drinking their blood. And the soul is considered the source of a person's vitality, and in some cultures, blood is the liquid form of a soul. This only made things worse for me, because at the time I had an unruly thirst for blood and flesh. So those similarities just made the vampire the most compatible of the demon souls I absorbed, which is probably why its powers were the ones that seemed the most dominant for me to use." Wendy nodded. "So that's why he said his biology is weird. While he is part demon and dragon, the demon half is a combination of all the demons he's absorbed. And with how many souls he has probably absorbed, it is honestly surprising that the vampire was on the top, but like her father said, that is probably because of the similar tastes and abilities between the two." Wendy then got a horrible idea in her head. "No, Wendy, as amusing as it would be and your blood is tasty," Wendy looked ready to faint. "I am not gonna use you as a human blood bank. I've had time to take control of such urges, and even if I couldn't control it, there are substitutes for human blood. Some of these substitutes include animal blood, absorbing magic, eating hot foods, and the last one is having sex with a willing female. All of these I could use to control any urge I may have for blood. But like I said, I have control over such urges." Wendy looked confused for a minute. Naruto looked curious. "What?" he finally asked. "2-chan, what sex?" she bluntly asked. Naruto looked blankly at her before laughing uncontrollably. "Ha. Oh, Kami, you haven't had the talk yet. I thought Grandini, your guild master, or one of the female members of your guild will tell you that." Naruto just looked at her amusingly, which Wendy did not like that look at all, but it seems the responsibility has fallen to little old me. This is gonna really interesting. Naruto then took great pleasure in explaining the birds and the bees to his daughter. Needless to say, Wendy could not look at her father for more than a few seconds before blushing into atomic levels of red for a few weeks. Like he said before, like mother, like daughter. Naruto shakes himself from his amusing flashbacks and bites into his forearm to allow his blood to spill and moved his arm so a steady flow of blood will flow into Wendy's mouth and injuries. Wendy would already heal thanks to her Dragonslayer healing factor, his blood just helped speed the process at a much faster rate. Just another benefit of being part vampire. Already he could see the smaller cuts and bruises already closing and disappearing. He quickly picks her up bridal style and walks back to their camping site. "Ah." Wendy groaned, before fluttering her eyes open to see the dark skies of the Makai staring back down at her. She groggily attempts to stand up but feels pain flare all over her body. "I suggest you sit down for now. You need to let your body recover." Wendy turns to see her father by a fireplace cooking several different animals, vegetables, and herbs for their dinner. The dinner consisted of roasted ham with a side of rabbit stew with vegetables. The aroma was really intoxicating, and Wendy could feel her mouth watering at the sight of the delicious meal being cooked. Naruto looks up to see the hungry look in his daughter's eyes and the drool falling from her mouth. He couldn't help but chuckle at the sight of the girl. Wendy hears this, and she turns to glare at her father. What's so funny, Tu-chan? The look on your face is priceless. You look like you could pounce on the food any second. It's rather amusing to see how that looks from the other side. Wendy pouts before looking away. A few minutes later the two are enjoying their meal. Well, Naruto is, Wendy was scarfing it all down like it would be the last meal she will ever have. Again Naruto couldn't help but be reminded of himself when he was Wendy's age. Wendy notices the nostalgic look in her father's eyes but ignores it for now and continues to gulp her food down before swallowing the last of it with a jug of water. Huff, huff, best meal ever. She gasped out. Well, I appreciate the compliments on my cooking, my chibiheim. Wendy narrowed her eyes at her father with a blush on her face. I told you not to call me that. It's embarrassing. Naruto just looked more amused. Why though, it's true. You are young and cute, meaning you're chibi. Plus you're my daughter, making you a princess in my eyes. So chibiheim feels like an appropriate nickname for you. Tu-chan. Wendy whined in embarrassment, while he just smiled at his daughter's antics. After trading some banter, Naruto decides to make some tea to help the two calm their nerves. We now find the father-daughter duo drinking tea made from the green leaves and herbs Naruto had collected earlier. The two enjoy the silence of the night, except for the cackling from the fireplace. Naruto notices that Wendy has been relatively quiet for a while now. Normally during this time, the two would be chatting about Wendy's life. During these 6 months for him, he had learned a great deal about his daughter, while he was away. He learned about her life in Fairy Tail, meeting the members of Fairy Tail for the first time, the battle against the Oración Cease, the battle with the artificial dragon, Naruto growls at that abomination, her adventures in Edelus, and finally the large-scale battle between Fairy Tail and Grimoire Heart. To say the Dragon King was proud, would be an understatement. He was amazed that Wendy could keep up with the other mages, many being S-ranked, which was nothing short of astounding. She was more skilled than he had ever been when he was her age. Tu-chan, he hears someone shout, which snaps him out of his daydreams and sees that his daughter had been calling him for a while. Naruto shakes his head before looking at Wendy. Sorry, I was lost in my thoughts again. What were you asking? Wendy just giggles. I was asking what were you thinking about? You look like you were thinking really hard about something. Your eyes also had a nostalgic look to them, like you were remembering something. Naruto smirks at her. I was thinking about the way you were scarfing your food down, and everything you told me you've been through, it just made me remember how I used to be when I was your age. Oh, I see, Wendy said. Her mood suddenly shifts, something that makes Naruto raise an eyebrow at this. He wondered what did he say that would cause a shift in his daughter's personality. Wendy was looking at the ground if she should say what was on her mind. Finally steeling herself, she looks up to her father. Tu-chan? Wendy asked. Yes, my dear, he replies. Can you tell me what you were like when you were my age? What your childhood was like? Wendy immediately noticed the mood around her father got very cold, and his face was full of sadness and rage. He sighed before looking down at the ground. Are you sure you want to know? Yes, I do, Tu-chan. I want to know everything about my daddy. Naruto looked up and Wendy was shocked at what she was seeing. Her father seems to have aged several hundred years right in front of her in the blink of an eye. He looked like a bitter old man that lived a life of misery and pain without a shred of hope left in his eyes. My upbringing was not a kind one, my daughter. This may change your opinion of humanity, and you may start hating your own species. Are you willing to risk it? He asks, only to be rewarded with a determined glare from Wendy. I know that. I knew the moment I came with you that a lot of things I know would be challenged. But I want to understand you, Daddy. I want to know what led you to live the life you had. What caused you to become who you are when you came to Tenro Island to the person training me in hell? Nothing will change the fact that I am your daughter and you always be my father. Wendy said. Naruto merely smiled a sad smile before sighing and looking up into the sky. Where to begin with my life? He asks out loud. The beginning is always a nice place to start, Wendy replies. Naruto chuckles before looking at his daughter. Well, to understand my life, you must understand where I was originally from. He asks. Wendy looked curious. I am actually not from Earthland. I am originally from a different dimension. Wendy gasped. She never thought her father would be from another world. And by the way, he said it, he was not from Edelus. No being in Edelus could naturally use magic like those of Earthland, and since her father was a human before becoming a dragon, he had to have come from somewhere. So the question was, where was her father's original home? Well, to answer the question bugging you, I am originally from a dimension called the Elemental Nations. Elemental Nations? Wendy asked. Naruto, indeed. Indeed, the world was divided into counties or nations with several smaller ones surrounding the bigger ones. The 5 largest ones were known as the 5 Great Nations. These were the 5 strongest national powers in that dimension. These nations were ruled by a daimyo, which would be the equivalent of the kings and queens of Earthland. Each nation had a shinobi village within it, and they were the military force of each country. Shinobi were the ninjas of my world. Are you with me so far? Naruto said, pausing before seeing Wendy nodding, and continues. The cage was the highest rank a shinobi could achieve and were considered the strongest of the village and sometimes led said village. However, there were several beings that were stronger than the cage himself. Shinobi fought similar to mages. Unlike mages that used Eternano and spells, shinobi used chakra and jutsu. The big difference is that chakra is created, maintained, and replenished within a person's body. It acts also as their life force. So their chakra goes down to 0, then they die. Jutsus are the shinobi equivalent to spells that are performed through a series of gestures called hand signs. Like magic, jutsu has various forms and can be used for a variety of attacks. Before you ask, I don't have my chakra network anymore, because it was completely combined with my magical reserves. So the two are now just one giant pool of energy. However, I have been able to replicate some of the techniques I have seen throughout my life as a shinobi using spells as a substitute for hand signs. Wendy nodded before her father continued. Yup. The deal was that Kurama would sacrifice his ability to reconstruct and allow the Shinigami to have his soul for all eternity. In exchange, I get all of his powers and abilities and be allowed another chance at life somewhere else with you. The Shinigami agreed and froze time for a period of time. He explained that myself and your mother will spend one night in a void that would last a year, but to the outside world, only a few hours would pass. So during the year, we procreated, and you were the result. When your soul had developed enough to exist, the Shinigami took it and bonded it to my soul. He explained that you will continue to exist so long as I lived. If I wanted you to be born, I needed to find another woman to carry and give birth to you. Kinda like a surrogate mother. I asked if the person I choose can have some qualities added to you, and he asked why. My reason was that if anyone was gonna give birth to you, it had to be someone I trusted and loved as much as your mother. I also wanted her to have just as much acclaim as your parent as your mother and myself. Naruto paused as he remembered his blonde bombshell of a wife, Anna. Kind and caring 1 second, but an explosive loudmouth when you get on her bad side. When I arrived in Earthland, I found love again in a woman called Anna. I told Anna everything about this and myself after we had been together for quite a while and wanted to get closer. She felt it was a privilege to carry you and was happy some of her qualities would pass on to you. That's why your hair is a brighter shade of blue than your mother's, and why you have brown eyes and not blue or lavender like me or Hinata. That all came from Anna. In a way, you should be happy. You've had 3 amazing people to call your mother. Hinata, Anna, and finally Grandini. All 3 very special women, and I could have not trusted any other woman or dragon to be your mother. Wendy just looked down in thought, digesting all she heard. She was feeling very happy, but also very sad. Happy that she learned more about her mother, in fact, both of them. She felt happy to know she had 3 loving mothers that did so much for her along with her daddy. However, she was sad because she may not be able to see any of them again. But she refused to let that get her down. Her mothers would not approve of that, and she would not disappoint them. She decided something that was bugging her about the story. Tu-chan, how do you know so much about Kurama-sama? Why did he help you? You talked about him like the 2 of you were close friends? She asked. Naruto just smiled. Well, I know so much about him, because Kurama was sealed within me. What? She yelled in shock. People that had a biju sealed within them were known as Jinchuriki. Also, known as the power of human sacrifice. Jinchuriki gained enormous reservoirs of chakra from the biju sealed within them. They also were able to harness and use the power of their biju, even being able to transform into them. However, Jinchuriki were seen as nothing more than weapons of war that the villages throws around to keep the others at bay. The Jinchuriki were also not well liked by the villagers. They saw them as the beast and not the jailer. This caused the Jinchuriki to live a very unhappy childhood and life that can leave them very unstable. Wendy looked in horror at what her father was implying. Are you saying, she couldn't finish as Naruto nodded? Yes, I was Kurama's last Jinchuriki. Wendy was shocked. If her father was the Jinchuriki to Kurama, what kind of unhappy childhood was her father forced to live? Tu-chan, what did you mean that you were the last Jinchuriki of Kurama? She asked, dreading the answer she will get. Naruto stood up before walking over to Wendy and crouching to be at eye level with her. The intense glare was getting to Wendy before Naruto spoke again. I was getting to that. Now I plan to show you my memories to make things easier. If I told you everything, we would be here all night. I will show the beginnings of my creation, the worst day in my life, the hell that was my childhood, my life as a shinobi, the day I was betrayed by my comrades, the day of your creation, and finally the day I died. Naruto closed his eyes and shouted, Byakugan. When he reopened his eyes they were a shining, pale white color. He then brought the middle and index fingers of his right hand up and poked Wendy's forehead. Be ready, it will be a bumpy ride. Memory share, he shouted as he glowed brightly, causing Wendy's eyes to widen and also begin shining the same white color. Wendy saw everything through those milky eyes. The day Minato and Kushina, her grandparents, met, the day her father was born and he lost everything, when the council shouted for his death, the day he was kicked out of the orphanage and lived off the streets for years, the days he was beaten, tortured, and violated in every way humanly possible, his months trying to end his life and failing miserably, the day he saved her mother, Hinata, from being kidnapped, saving her from the bullies that picked on her, his days in the academy and striving to become Hokage, his graduation and finding someone that cared about him, meeting his teammates and sensei for the first time, his first, serious mission outside the village and becoming a hero to wave, the invasion of the waterfall village, the insanity that was the Chunin exams, meeting Kurama, and the invasion, his battle against Shikaku, his search for the next Hokage, Tsunade, his mission protecting the actress, Kyoki, the battle to get his renegade teammate back, the last betrayal against him, his time in jail, awaiting his impending execution, Wendy's mother comes to visit him and her confession to him, the deal he made with Kurama and the Shinigami, the fox gives his power to Naruto and Hinata, the time Wendy was conceived, Wendy blushed to atomic levels, but thankfully did not need to see everything to get the point. The day he was executed and set on fire but mocked them up until he was turned to ash. Finally, after what seemed like hours, only minutes passed really, the spell ended and the two returned to reality. Naruto looked to see Wendy's head down, but still saw the waterfall of tears that had fallen and soaked her dress and cheeks. Wendy had cried so much during that ordeal. She cried so much that her eyes could no longer shed tears, all that was left was the loud sobbing and shaking of her body. Never in her life had she seen something so disturbing. While some events were rushed over, she still got the point that her father was trying to get across. That his life was literally hell. But the thing that kept bugging her was why. Why did her father have to suffer so much? Why did he have to suffer for the greed of that masked bastard? How could the village treat such an innocent child so violently? It made no sense to her. She now knew why her father gave her that warning in the beginning. She could feel a great deal of hatred toward that village. No amount of reason would ever change her view on those humans, she knew that. They did not deserve any forgiveness from her or anyone else. They were mostly all trash like her father said. Before wallowing anymore, she decided to give her father response to those memories. Naruto was expecting a lot of responses, but he did not expect Wendy to tackle him into a bear hug. He blinks before looking down to see her giving him the hardest bear hug the young mage could muster. He then heard her muttering something through the sobbing. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Naruto was perplexed. Why was she apologizing? He cupped her cheeks and lifted her head so she was looking at her. Wendy, why are you apologizing? He asked and watched her sniff before Wendy responded, because I forced you to relive such awful memories. I caused you so much pain, just for my selfish desires. Wendy, it's only fair based on our... Nothing about your childhood or life was fair. Naruto was taken back by the outburst. You should have never suffered like that. The Sandaime and the others did barely anything to help you. Hell, the people of the slums, the Ichiraku people, and my mother did more for you than most of the villagers. Yet you stayed loyal to them. They threw everything at you, and you kept moving forward. Why? Why did you keep trying to remain loyal to them? I just don't understand. Naruto sighed, knowing his daughter would react something like this. Wendy, where would I have gone? I had no one and nowhere to go. If I left I would have been chased until I was brought back. I thought if I became Hokage they would look up to me, it was my last ray of hope for the village. I thought I could finally be loved. But that died the day I was imprisoned when I brought their Uchiha back. The two remained in a silent embrace with Wendy sobbing into his chest. Tu-chan, do you hate me? Wendy asked. Naruto's eyes widened before looking at Wendy in shock. What? Asterisk sniff, do you hate me? Do you hate that I remind you so much of Hinata Okaa-sama and Anna-san? Is that one of the reasons why you stayed away from it? Because I reminded you too much of them? Do you regret having me? Slap. Wendy received the shock of her life when Naruto smacked her across the face. Wendy remained still like a statue until she was brought into a tight hug by Naruto. Listen to me, Wendy. I am only going to say this once, so you better listen. Yes, I miss your mother. I wish I could be with both of them right now. But I never, repeat, ever would regret having you. You are proof that Hinata's and my love for another was real. You were one of the reasons I stayed sane during many of my dark days. You were my light that kept me from going completely mad in the darkness as your mothers did before. I love you, Wendy Marvell. And no matter what happens I always will. You are my beloved daughter, and that will never change. I swear to the dragons, Q Lightning, to that. Wendy remained shell-shocked before burying her face into his chest and gripping him harder in the hug she was trapped in. She began chanting, "Thank you," over and over again while Naruto just held her until she dozed off from physical and mental exhaustion. Naruto carried her to her sleeping bag for the night. As he laid down he heard her say one last thing, "I promise to erase all your sadens, Tu-chan. And make you the happiest dragon that has ever lived. I swear that to you." Unbeknownst to Wendy, Naruto smiled a small smile at his daughter and gave her a kiss on her head. "You already have, Wendy. You already have." Naruto was about to doze off but noticed an odd seal on Wendy's abdomen. Curious, he touches the seal and pours magical energy into it. There's a flash of light that blinds the Dragon King. Naruto blinks. When he gets his bearings, he sees he is in the middle of a vast meadow filled with numerous flowers. He could see a lake in the far distance. To his left was a hill with a large tree standing on the top. The skies were a clear crystal blue. Naruto recognized this place immediately. Wendy's inner world. It's been so long since I have been here. Probably around 400 years since the last time I went inside here. I never thought that I would meet you here of all places, Naruto. Naruto froze when he heard that voice. He recognized it almost anywhere. That sweet, gentle voice. He turned to see a dragon. This dragon's biology seems closer to a bird's. It had a feathery body like a bird's and was covered in pure white feathers. It had 2 wings with 3 fingers on top of said wings. It had 3 sets of talons that were sharp but gentle like a bird. Her skull was flat and also covered in feathers. She had 3 smooth tails. Her eyes were a deep ocean blue. Beautiful as always, he mused. It's good to see you, Naruto. It's good to see you as well, Grandini. Chapter 7 The Chat Between the Sky and the Apocalypse. Naruto just continued to stare at the Sky Dragon Queen, Grandini. He had not seen the giant fluff of cloud for 400 years along with Igneal and the other dragons that had taken a Dragonslayer. The last image he had of her was his claw as it ripped her magic, more specifically her soul, right out of her body just like he did to the other dragons. Like he did to his father. He murdered his family, and the sickening truth was that part of him enjoyed it as he continued to rip into them. Now as he stands in front of one of the dragons he was closest to, he doesn't know where to begin. As if reading his mind, Grandini just smiled kindly at him. Now Naruto, please don't tell me you still blame yourself for what happened to me and the other dragons? You really should stop trying to carry the weight of the war, and the world itself on your shoulders. It's not healthy for you. Plus it just makes you seem like stereotypical emo as you well put it. She remarked as if she was scolding a child. Naruto just grew a very sour look from what he was called. I told you to never call me emo. The word is taboo for me to ever be called or become that. I have seen enough of that shit in my lifetime from people around me, and I refuse to become like that Uchiha or Zeref for that matter. Naruto growled out. Grandini just narrowed her eyes in annoyance, and I thought I told you never to swear, curse, or use profanities in my presence. I specifically remember Anna, Irene, and myself drilling into your head that you must show proper manners and etiquettes to your elders. Naruto just smirked evilly. Oh, so you are old now? Then does that mean I can call you Granny now? Grandini's eyes widened before narrowing in rage. I thought I told you that you never mention a woman's age. That is a sensitive topic that must never be discussed. She roared at him. Naruto just looked amused. But I never brought it up, you're the one that did. I was merely confirming it. Naruto remarked calmly. Grandini growled again before calming down and sighing. You haven't changed a bit, you know? You the same disrespectful little brother that I remember watching over. Naruto just smirked. And you're the same uptight big sister that never seems to learn that proper respect and etiquettes were not something I just handed out to anyone, regardless of who they were. The two just stared at one another before finally letting out a laugh together. It had been a very long since the two shared a good laugh with one another. It was something that they both missed. After laughing for a good while, the two managed to calm down to hold a reasonable conversation. So I see my theory was correct. You and the other dragons did hide yourselves within your Dragonslayers. Naruto finally said. Grandini nodded. Yes, it was the only to save ourselves after what happened, and it was also the only way to stop our Dragonslayers from becoming like you. At least that's what we hoped, she explained. Naruto nodded. I agree and understand why you did it, but it still doesn't excuse how reckless it was. You all knew that my research on that secret art was still in the experimental stage. It was literally based on theories and calculations. There was no practicality to it at all. We don't know what repercussions could come from this. For all we know, the minute you come out you may not be able to return and you will pass on into the afterlife. How can the 5 of you dragons do something so stupid like that? Answer me, Nei-san. Grandini looked sadly at her surrogate little brother. She understood why he was angry, but there was no other option but to save their Dragonslayers. Even if it meant that leaving their bodies would mean their death, it would be worth the risk as long as they protected their children. Naruto, your anger is justified, but you and I both know that the risk to learn Dragonslayer magic was too high for the children. Something we did not learn until much later. We could not let those children suffer as you and Irene did. We swore we would do whatever it took to protect our children, regardless of the risk we had to take. If you have a problem with it, well, tough shit, it's done and over with, so there's nothing you can be done about it. Naruto just growls before sighing and pinching his nose in frustration. Sigh. Seriously, how is it that I was able to corrupt dragons to become so stubborn that they would throw away their lives too easily? He asked himself. Grandini just smiled in response. You inspired us, Naruto. You showed us the true potential that lies dormant with humanity. You are the champion of our races. The first human to rise to become something even we could never manage. We simply wanted to follow your example. It's not like I gave a very good example after I became a dragon. We all make mistakes, Naruto. What matters is that we learn from that mistake. And the fact that you are training Wendy now proves you have learned from your mistakes and are beginning to move forward with your life again, Naruto. You are beginning to live again. Naruto just rose an eyebrow at that remark. I don't think we can really call it living. Especially with how screwed up my biology is. After everything I have eaten and absorbed, I don't think I will be dying for a very long time, if ever. But regardless, I will not let that stop me. I have to make amends for the sins I have committed against the word. Especially against the dragons, Wendy, and the others. Grandini just bent her head and nuzzled it against Naruto, who didn't resist and let the giant pillow have her moment while scratching the back of her giant ear. I'm glad to have you back to how you used to be, Naruto Odoudo. Naruto shook his head. I haven't gone back, nor have I stayed still. I just began walking forward again. Grandini retracted her head to look at Naruto. Naruto, now that you know that I am here and where the other dragons are, do you plan to tell Wendy and the other Dragonslayers? Naruto just looked at her questionably. You make it sound like you don't want Wendy to find out. Honestly, I don't think she and the other Dragonslayers are ready to know. There is still time for them to grow and mature. Maybe then they will be ready. Naruto just frowned. I am sorry, but you and the other dragons are very mistaken. Grandini just looked at him for answers. If you have been with them this entire time, then you know about everything they have gone through. Wendy has gone through a very long journey to get where she is now. I believe she is ready to learn the truth. She is ready for the responsibility. Grandini just continued to look at the blonde dragon king. What about the others? Natsu and Gajeel may be ready, but I refuse to give that same courtesy to those two bastards. They don't deserve to call themselves Dragonslayers, growled out. Naruto, isn't that a little harsh? Grandini asked. Naruto growled even more. No, it is not. Those two from Sabretooth flaunt around their Dragonslayers like it's some toy to make children jealous. Not to mention they brag that they killed their dragons. They feel proud that they killed the very dragons that raised them and treated them like their own flesh and blood. I am ashamed to even be categorized in the same group as them. They are not Dragonslayers. They are a disgraces to everything that makes someone a Dragonslayer in the first place. I know you do not approve of how Sting and Rogue ended up, but there was nothing you could do for them, Naruto. Waisalohia and Skiadrum thought if they made their Dragonslayers believe they killed them, then they would be mentally prepared to kill the real thing. Well, they were very mistaken. Those two have become arrogant assholes that enjoy picking on the weak and to spit on people's beliefs about companionship. Yet those two walk around with exceed. They are the definition of hypocritical assholes, Grandini. Hell, those idiots think they can kill me. Seriously, what in the bloody hell is wrong with those two? Grandini sighed, knowing that Naruto had a very good reason for being upset. The last time Dragonslayers became arrogant like Sting and Rogue, they joined the opposing side of the war and slaughtered several dragons and Dragonslayers. Many of those killed were young hatchlings. Naruto did not take to this kindly. Not even close. In fact, when Naruto found them, he mercilessly slaughtered every last one of the traitors along with the enemy dragons. By the end of it, the entire area they found Naruto in was a sea of blood. No one could believe the brutality of Naruto's actions. It got worse when Naruto took the severed heads of the traitors and put them on spikes and warned the remaining Dragonslayers that if they even think about betraying the dragons again, he would do far more terrible things to them than what he did to the ones before. Now to hear two of the kids he helped look after becoming like the traitors he killed was a major blow to him. It felt like they were spitting on everything Naruto sacrificed for them. Naruto, I know you are enraged. You have every right to be, but you can do nothing to change how they were raised in this time period. All you can do is hopefully set on the right path like you're doing with Wendy. Naruto growled again but stopped before reluctantly nodding. Fine, but I am so breaking them to the ground if Natsu, Gajeel, Laxus, or Wendy don't do it first. Speaking of Wendy, there is something you need to know about the power you gave her when she was still little. Naruto frowned at this. What happened? Naruto, when you gave her that power there were some unforeseen consequences. The power of Kurama's chakra that you gave her completely destroyed the dragon seed in her body. It then merged with her Dragonslayer magic and became something else. Now this part of her power gives her access to her dragon form without having to go through the process of dragon fiction. She is now in a sense just like you and Irene, a fourth-generation Dragonslayer. Naruto's eyes widen at this. What? I know, I was just as shocked as you. Of course, she won't have access to it right away. She still needs to learn about Dragon Force and Elemental Avatar mode, Sky Dragon Queen mode. However, she is now potentially the most powerful Dragonslayer of her generation. That is if Ignil's boy doesn't fall to his own demons. Naruto nods at this. However, there are still consequences with this. Naruto looks at her. What consequences? Naruto, that power you gave to her is very vile and malevolent. It feeds on her negative emotions, making itself stronger. And now it has merged with her draconian side, making it even more dangerous. You know better than anyone how difficult a Slayer's draconian side can be to control. However, this will be even worse for Wendy. If she loses control to her draconian side, she could go into her full dragon form and she'll go on a rampage similar to how Jinchuriki did in your world and how some of the Dragonslayers did 400 years ago. Naruto looked down. This was very good and very bad. The plus side is that Wendy will be much stronger than ever before and may be able to do what she intended to do in the first place. Become the strongest Dragonslayer she can possibly be. However, as Grandini said, she could go on a rampage and hurt those around her without even intending it. It would be deja vu all over again for him. He sighs before looking at Grandini. Grandini, I understand your worry, trust me I do, but you know I gave her that power so that she would be protected. I gave her that power because I believe she can handle it and protect those around her. You say she'll lose control, but I know Wendy will be able to master her power. If she does lose control, I have contingencies to stop her from going on a rampage. And if it proves to be too much, I will personally move in and stop her. Grandini looks at him before just sighing and then smiles at Naruto. Alright Naruto, I will trust you to have this under control. Naruto nodded in gratitude. Tell me, is there any way to help you? Grandini shook her head. None that I know of. Unless you found a way to complete your research? I went back to the drawing board and I may have found a solution, but I am not using any of you 5 as lab rats so it can wait. Grandini nodded. Now about my location, tell Wendy. She was about to continue, but Naruto held his hand up. Relax. I promise I won't tell her now. But make no mistake, after July 7th I will the Dragonslayers everything. And nothing you say will stop me. They deserve to the truth. Grandini. Sigh, very Naruto. It's not like I can stop. You have my blessings. Naruto nodded. Thank you. Now I believe it's time for you to go. Naruto soon began to fade from the mindscape. I'll see you soon Naruto. Good luck with Wendy. She can be a handful. Naruto chuckled as he faded away. Grandini frowns before turning to the other side of the mindscape to see a dark puddle beginning to bubble out before something rose and took a female shape. Why did you not reveal yourself? My time to show myself has not yet arrived. But soon Wendy will gain access to that power. So I will make my presence soon. Wendy will lose control. It's inevitable. Maybe, but she will master her power. Even if you try to take her over, her father will stop you. The voice of the bloop just chuckled evilly. We shall see. The voice said before it disappeared back into the pool. Grandini just sighed before looking up in the mindscape. Please be safe, Wendy. Don't fall into the darkness. When Naruto regains his bearings, he sees he's back at the campsite. He looks over to see Wendy is fast asleep without a care in the world. Naruto just sighs before looking up into the night sky. What the fuck have I gotten myself into? Chapter 8 Shocking Revelations, The Trial of Power, and the Fated Meeting. Wendy concentrated her wind around her fingers, air cutters. Wendy launches several blades of wind from the tips, heading straight for her opponent. Naruto looked at the blades with a critical eye. He raises his hand as a spinning disc of Eternano appears above the appendage. Kinzen, Naruto muttered before launching it to counter the blades. The two attacks collide with the Kinzen managing to hold off all 10 of the blades before the attacks cancel each other out. Wendy places her hands forward, palms open forward, as a magic circle appeared in front of her, Tenryu no Tatsumaki, Sky Dragon's Tornado. A giant tornado of wind forms heading straight for her blonde father. Naruto concentrates his Eternano into his hand until it was shaped around it like a blade. Hakai no Yeba, Destruction Blade, he mutters before swinging his arm downwards, cutting the tornado in half, completely destroying it. Naruto continued to look at his daughter. You need to do better than that, my dear daughter. Naruto then stretches his arms, his palms semi-closed as if they were squeezing something. Naruto smirked darkly. Perhaps, you need some motivation. Naruto ended in a dark tone as tendrils of magic came out of his palms and attached themselves to the trees. Each tree that was touched was soon enveloped in a black aura. Wendy could hear the cracks and snaps of the plants as they were being contorted into a new form. When the aura disappeared, Wendy saw that all the trees touched had all been turned into 25 demonic creatures.
All of the demons
were all around 5 feet in height. They had 6 roots for legs with the trunk of the tree as the main body for the demon. The arms were long with bushes around the wrists and 3 clawed fingers for hands. The most noticeable attribute was 2 roots pointed upwards as horns with a third on the forehead with a beady, red eye below the middle horn. Naruto smirked at the girl, who continued to look critically at the demons. Allow me to introduce you to Mokuryu no Majutsushi, Wood Dragon's demonic servants. It's one of the spells for the wood dragons and their Dragonslayers. It allows them to create an army of wood monsters on their side. The bigger the forest they are in and the better control they have, the more powerful the servants they create. I like to call this particular breed, Trevenants. Let's see how you fare against them, my Chibiheim. Wendy showed no fear and looked even more determined. Ready, when you are, To-san, she yelled in defiance. Naruto chuckled before ordering the trees to attack. Wendy crosses her arms in front of her chest, Veneer. Arms. Armor. Wendy exclaims her enchantment spells as her speed, power, and defense increase. She quickly jumps into the air to dodge an arm sweep of the first demon to attack her. She reels her arm back and forms a fist, wham. Crunch. Wendy's punch pierces right through the head of the demon with a sickening crunch as the demon wails in pain before crumbling to pieces. Wendy then sees 5 more jumps to attack her from all her sides. However, before she could be hit by the first one to reach her, she begins to spin in a clockwise formation. She creates a dome of wind and magical power that not only protects her but also is damaging the demons. Tenryu no Kaden, Sky Dragon's heavenly spin, the dome of wind rips the demons to pieces as they are sent from the aftermath of the attack. Wendy then sees 7 outstretch their arms as their fingers turn into long, wooden, spears aiming for her. She claps her hands together as a magic circle appears in front of her as the wind contorts to form several swords of air. Wind blades, she shouts as she launches them at the demons, intercepting the spears and slicing right through them. She quickly disappears in a gust of wind, before appearing right in front of the demons with her arms coated in wind torrents. Tenryu no Yokugeki, Sky Dragon's wing attack. The 7 wood demons are caught in the wind torrents as they are ripped apart to pieces. The last 12 attacked her from all directions, but Wendy was not deterred. A magic seal appeared right below Wendy with her arms out, her palms glowing, and then the seal began to stretch out to cover the area below the 12 demons. Tenryu no Namiroshi. Sky Dragon's wave wind. Wendy shouts as she crosses her arms as a massive tornado erupts from the seal, capturing the last of the demons and ripping them into pieces. Wendy turns to her father and disappears in a blur of wind using her Fupo, wind step. Naruto blocks her right hook and lifts his other arm up. A giant pillar of earth erupts below them and smashes Wendy as it rises into the sky. Wendy quickly gets up, feeling the effects of her enhancements disappear. She raises her right leg upwards and channels her magic as it is coated in a thick layer of magic. Tenryu no Sutenkyaku, Sky Dragon's heavenly foot of pain. She slammed her axe kick on the platform. The pillar of earth shook from the force of the attack as cracks begin to appear all around the pillar. It completely shatters into pieces. Wendy claps her hands together as she takes a deep breath. Daitapa, great breakthrough. She blew a powerful gust of wind that sent the pieces of earth straight for her father. Naruto looks amused by the attack and merely outstretches his arm forward, right in front of the incoming boulders. Hakai Reza, destruction laser. The beam of Eternano fired out of his palm. The beam completely obliterates all of the incoming boulders and the remnants of the earth pillar. Wendy lands softly on the ground while looking straight at her father. Naruto lowers his arm. He smirks at his daughter, amusement and pride dancing all over his eyes. Good. Good. Don't let your guard down. Keep yourself tense, and never stop until your opponent is down for good. Naruto raises his right index finger and begins to spin it as water began to swirl above him until it is shaped into the form of a dragon around 5 meters in height and 10 in length. Naruto raises ring and middle fingers as dragons of lightning and wind began to form alongside the water dragon. Wendy did not take chances as she crosses her arms and shouts, "Ill arms, ill veneer, ill armor." These were the advanced versions of her enchantment spells. She tensed waiting for Naruto's next move. The aforementioned blonde continues to smirk until it turned into a bone-chilling smile. Naruto then raises his hand above his head and closes it into a fist, and while this was going on, the 3 dragons fused together, creating a dragon that was nearly 3 times the size of the original 3. Wendy's eyes widen at what she was seeing. Her dad just performed a triple unison raid? With just 1 arm, no less. Seriously, how more broken can her father get? Naruto just continued to smile evilly. Let's see how you handle this. Triple unison raid, Typhoon Dragon Bullet. He shouted as the dragon roared and launched straight for Wendy. Wendy wasted no time and performed a Kaden to block the attack. Wendy gritted her teeth, doing her best to maintain her defense dome to withstand the attack and stay intact. Wendy roared as she pushed the attack back. The collision caused an explosion to occur, covering the area in a thick layer of smoke. Naruto channeled some wind around his arm and with one horizontal sweep caused the smoke to disappear. He saw that the area around took some severe damage, with trees being uprooted from the winds, and/or soaked by the water, and finally scorched by the electricity. He sees Wendy on her hands and knees panting and decides to give her a helping hand. He quickly disappears in a black blur. Wendy had barely enough time to react when her danger senses were screaming at her to dodge. She black flips and narrowly dodges her father's attack. She narrows her eyes when she sees the weapons in his hands. 2 red beams of energy, each coming out of his palms, the ethereal blades. Dad must really be enjoying this to summon those weapons, she thought with a grimace. The ethereal blades were one of her father's more cheap abilities. Well, cheap in her mind anyway. They were blades of energy that could vibrate at different speeds, which affected their cutting ability. At base, they were painful bulging clubs that Wendy had the misfortune of having an up-close encounter with them in several of her spars. Wendy was cut from her musing as Naruto appeared above to strike her again. Wendy blocked the 2 strikes with the 2 wind blades she created. Never take your eyes off the opponent. Naruto put more pressure on his blades, causing Wendy to falter. Or it can get you killed, he exclaimed before sending a devastating roundhouse kick to her right arm. Crack. A sickening crack was heard as Wendy's arm was easily broken and she was sent tumbling to the ground. She continued to spiral until she impacted hard on the trunk of a tree. Snap. Wendy gasped as she heard a snap on her shoulder that collided with the tree. Wendy looked and saw that her shoulder was now dislocated. Great, she thought sarcastically, 1 arm broken and a dislocated shoulder in the other. If wasn't for the fact I was accustomed to having my limbs broken by now, I would be withering in pain on the ground. That was one thing she was grateful for, the harsh training regiment. She gained 1 hell of pain tolerance, but that still didn't mean it wasn't any less painful for her. Wendy slowly and painfully got back to her feet. She looked up to see her father still waiting for her next move. Wendy narrowed her eyes before slamming her shoulder into the trunk hard. With another audible snap, the limb was back in place. Wendy grunted from the pain before testing her arm to make sure everything was back to normal. She looked to see her father looking at her in slight surprise. She quickly put her arm over her broken one and soon a green aura surrounded the broken limb. This was her new healing spell, the Tenryu no Shozen, Sky Dragon's Mystic Palm. It was a spell based on medical ninjutsu from her father's old world. She learned the basics from her mother's notes and combining them with her own medical knowledge and skills, she created a healing spell that not only healed her allies quickly and from a distance with enough training, but also herself as well. That was the main reason her father wanted her to learn, so she could have a way to heal herself when she had no supportive allies around her. The problem was that the spell needed serious concentration to perform. One false move and you could blow up the limb you're trying to heal. The other handicap is that it takes a huge chunk of magical energy to perform the spell, so she had to think very carefully about when to use the spell, lest she want to be completely depleted of her reserves. She sighed as the spell finally completed its job and her arm was in working order again. Naruto could honestly be surprised at how Wendy reattached her limb. That was something he would do back in his genin days. He shook his head. His daughter was taking a bit too close to his old reckless persona. He honestly hoped she did not become too much like him. He looked back at her. Ready to continue? She nodded. Suddenly, Naruto's blades shrunk until they disappeared into his palms. The two hands begin to glow an eerie blue with small sparks flying. He lifts his hands over his head and claps them together. Wendy's eyes widen recognizing the attack, and immediately began forming several blades of wind. Raises Sakasu, Laser Circus. Wind Blade Barrage. The two shouted as their two attacks were launched. For Naruto, a barrage of energy projectiles from his joined palms, and Wendy, a number of wind blades from her. The two attacks collided with both projectiles nullifying each other. As the smoke cleared, both gave each other a stare until Wendy felt a pulse of magic from all around her. She looked around and was shocked to see visible Eternano particles appear and all gather around her father. She saw the particles all collect above her father's head in the shape of a sphere. Alarm bells went off, realizing what her father was about to unleash and quickly prepared for the worst. She quickly began gathering the magical air particles in the atmosphere and began absorbing them at a quick pace. Her magic began to flare as an aura began to surround her. The streams of air began to enter every pore of her body. Her eyes gained slits, her nails grew sharper and became more like claws, her hair gained pink highlights, her skin gained white scales, and finally, 3 black lines began to take shape on her cheeks. Whisker marks. Tsukai Doraibu, Sky Drive, she muttered, having completed her transformation. This was the penultimate form a Dragonslayer achieves before learning Dragon Force. It gives the Dragonslayer a boost to their abilities that can easily go as high as 10 times their normal form. Wendy had learned it after 3 months of grueling training, but she still needed the experience to have full mastery over it. However, right now she needed to focus on the problem at hand. Ill veneer, ill arms, ill armor, she shouted as she was enveloped once more in her enchantment spells, and with her drive mode will give her a boost to her abilities and hopefully handle the attack that is coming. She noticed the sphere was nearly complete and was the size of a regular beach ball. Wendy began to inhale as much air as possible into her mouth and preparing for her counterattack. Naruto continued to focus on the sphere as it was completed. He concentrated as he forced the sphere to shrink to half of its original size. He opens his mouth, revealing his razor-sharp teeth, and swallowed the ball of raw energy. His cheek puckered up a bit as streams of energy began to leave his mouth. He smiles evilly at Wendy, who glares back at him defiantly, with her cheeks also puckered out. Hakai. Destruction. Tenryu no, Sky Dragons. Hoko, Roar. The two Dragonslayers shout out their signature roar attacks. For Wendy, it was a giant of wind, and Naruto a beam of pure magical energy. Boom. A massive explosion erupts from the collision of the two attacks, obscuring both Dragonslayers' vision of their opponents. Dust, debris, and trees are sent flying from the explosive attacks. The aftermath of the explosion leaves a massive dust cloud in its wake. Naruto regains his vision and quickly uses the Byakugan to look for Wendy, but finds no sign of her. He knows that attack was not enough to obliterate her, let alone kill her, especially since he is holding way back to make sure his daughter can live to see the next morning. He continues to look, but still sees no sign of Wendy. Now where have you gone, my Chibiheim? You're using the dust cloud to hide yourself somewhere. A clever move, if I was an ordinary enemy. But as I told Minato 7 years ago, I am anything but normal. Naruto exclaimed before taking a deep and shouting, Tenryu no Hoko. Naruto fired his own Sky Dragon's roar just like his daughter. The difference was it was a lot bigger and packed a lot more power as it tore through the cloud of dust and debris and continued sailing forward, ripping even more trees and debris from the earth, and sending them flying everywhere. Naruto stopped to look around and still saw no sign of Wendy, until a slight shift in the wind behind him. He summoned his tail and blocked an incoming, surprise attack. He turns to see Wendy inches from delivering a crushing fang attack to his head. Naruto smiled, knowing how effective the attempt was, but ultimately failed. Not bad, Wendy-chan, but you need to do better than that. He said, before noticing her smile. Something was wrong. I know, Chu-chan, she said as another Wendy appeared above the first one as the first one disappeared in a plume of wind. Naruto's eyes widen. A wind clone? He was about to intercept the second Wendy when he hears a cracking sound and sees Wendy come out of the ground. The second Wendy disappears as the real one places her open palms over her face and shouted, "Solar flare." A blinding light hits Naruto, completely blinding his vision. He grunts before jumping away. A combination of wind clones, solar flare, and the move I used against Neji. He, she really is my daughter. Then again, I should expect nothing less from her. Naruto thought in pride at the tactic that his daughter used against him, and wondered what her next move would be. He did not have to wait long as he sensed his daughter approaching him with a large concentration of magical energy in her palm. That could only mean. Naruto quickly cocked his fist back as it glowed in magical energy. Wendy jumped and reeled her attack back, and the two shouted, Tenryu no Rasengan, Sky Dragon Spiraling Sphere, Akuryukin, Devil Dragon Fist. The two attacks met in a headlong collision, causing another explosion. As the dust settled, Wendy was a feet away on her last knees and on the brink of collapsing. Her enchantments and drive form have long since disappeared and left her completely dry on stamina and magical reserves. She looked up to see her father was not even winded at all. Instead, all the damage that he received was a few scuffs to his uniform and the sleeve and glove of the right arm being destroyed. However, that was still an accomplishment to leave some kind of damage on him. Naruto looked at his hand that collided with Wendy's Rasengan. His hand had nicks and scratches, but they were slowly disappearing. He looked to see his jacket sleeve up to the elbow was completely destroyed. He looked at his daughter with a wide grin. Not of malicious intent, but one of pride. Pride for her. He soon began clapping and laughing like a maniac. Magnificent my Chibi-heim. That is what I wanted to see from our latest spar. Your power, speed, wisdom, and ingenuity when using your magic. Wendy looked at her father, waiting for him to explain, you've proved you have power when you countered many of my attacks and even managed to damage my jacket. Something that is especially difficult to do, since Hinata-chan made it very durable and resistant to damage. Wendy nodded, you proved you have speed when you reacted quickly to all of my attacks and did not waste a single action. You had wisdom when knowing what attack to use and which not. Like Shozen. Wendy nodded once more. Finally, you've shown ingenuity when you took many of mine and your mother's attacks and made them into your own, and with the last-minute plan you came up with after our roar attacks collided. He walked over and gave her a pat on the head. You are turning into a fine Dragonslayer, my daughter. I could be any more proud of you. Wendy beamed at the praise. She would have hugged him if she had any strength left. Now then, today has shown me that perhaps you are ready for that trial. Wendy titled her head in confusion. What trial? Naruto shook his head. You'll learn about it tonight. Wendy nodded in acceptance. It must be a serious reason to get my father to act so seriously. Later on, the two returned to their camp with the sun of the Makia descending down the horizon. Wendy always wondered how the heck there was a sun in hell, but decided to leave it as some sort of magical power that Giratina has. Though she wondered what the other parts of the Makai were like, and if they had sun or moon as well. Plus, being in hell, she wondered if Giratina would ever make an appearance before her and her father. As she sat down waiting for dinner, she noticed that her father's eyes were half closed. This meant he was in deep thought about something. She knew this because after spending so much time with him, she noticed all of his quirks that let her know what he was feeling. She found it kinda funny that the Dragon King would have any type of quirk. Well, a quirk besides being a complete sadist, but that's beside the point. Speaking of the Dragon King, Naruto was thinking hard about something. It had been a while after his talk with Grandini, and Naruto had increased Wendy's training regiment to prepare her for the possible trial. Naruto wanted to get Wendy comfortable in her drive mode before attempting to teach her Dragon Force. Fortunately, Wendy took it in strife and did not question it. However, Naruto was contemplating how the hell was he gonna explain to his daughter that he sealed Kurama's power into her. Hell, how was he gonna tell her that he inadvertently turned her into a dragon like him? How was she gonna react to his? He was seriously wondering if this was how Minato felt when he sealed Kurama into his own son. Was this what he thought when he was dying? Did he think about he would react when found out the truth? Naruto was so lost that he was actually thinking about his ex-father. That's how worried he is about Wendy's reaction. Naruto sighed before shaking his head with those thoughts. Constantly thinking about this gave only what-if scenarios and no solid end to the stream of questions coming to his head. He sighed again and looked at Wendy when she called his name. Yes, Chibi-heim? Wendy glared at him for the nickname but sighed before asking her question. 2-san, why have you been acting so strange these past few weeks? It's like you just discovered something horrible and are trying to come to terms with what you did. Did I do something wrong? 2-san, please tell me what's wrong. I want to help you. She spoke with utmost sincerity. Naruto sighed. Great, now he got his daughter worried that she did something wrong. She was just like Hinata in that regard. They both can tell if something is wrong with him, and immediately think they did something wrong. Seriously, Wendy could seriously pass as Hinata's twin, minus the eyes and hair color of course. He sighed, deciding it's best to straight up tell her and not beat around the bush. So he looked at his daughter before speaking. Alright, I want you to listen carefully and not interrupt me until I am finished. Wendy nodded, and Naruto breathed out before speaking again. Alright, the thing is that after the night of telling you about my time in Konoha, Wendy growls at the mention of the village, I discovered something off with your Dragonslayer magic. What's wrong with my magic? Wendy was worried that her magic is inadequate or worse she may not be able to raise it to its full potential like Natsu, Gajeel, or even Laxus. I am getting to that, but first I want to ask you something. Do remember when you were really young, like 4 or so, and I asked you to come with me to a secluded area of the forest for something important? Wendy adopted a thinking pose with her arms crossed over her chest, and her eyes closed. She almost looked like an adorable blue fox. If Naruto was a lesser he would gush at how cute she looked. Flashback, Wendy-chan, please come over here. Naruto called out. From a small makeshift house, a cute 4-year-old girl came out. She had short blue hair that reached her neck and a cute white dress. The aforementioned girl looks at Naruto before gaining a huge grin and running up to him. Daddy. Naruto chuckled as his daughter kept an iron grip on his legs. It's good to see you again, Daddy. Where did you go? What have you been doing? Did you come to see Grandini Ka-san? Are you gonna tell me another story about Okaasama? Is Anna Ka-chan or Auntie Irene with you? Did you bring me a pretty gift? Wendy bombarded Naruto with question after question and she did not look winded at all. The blonde could only shake in amusement at his little bundle of energy. He picks her up and gives her a peck on the cheek, which entices some giggles from the young girl. Not today, my Chibiheim. I have something important to give you. The young girl looked excited and told her daddy to lead the way. The aforementioned parent chuckles as he walks his way into a secluded area of the woods near Wendy's home. He set his daughter down before taking a few steps back. He then stretched out his arm and closes his eyes. Wendy noticed her dad's face contort in concentration as a black and red orb emerged from his palm. The orb was the size of a melon and if you looked closely enough you could the silhouette of a fox with 9 tails. Instead of being afraid, Wendy looked at the malicious orb with odd wonder. 2-chan, what's in the sphere? Is it a present? Can I play with it? Oh, can I eat it? She excitingly asked. Naruto opened his eyes to look at his daughter, amusement dancing in his eyes at the questions fired at him. No, Wendy-chan, you can't eat this. Wendy pouts, but it is a gift. Wendy did a complete 180 and looked like her birthday came early, but then she got curious. What kind of gift? Naruto smirked. A gift to help improve your Dragonslayer magic and to protect you when your mothers and I are not always around to protect you. Really? Will it make me strong? Naruto nodded. Very strong, but don't try to use it right away. When you're old enough I will teach you how to use it properly. For now, it will only activate under dire situations, until such a time comes that you can control it on your own. He looked down at her seriously. However, this power is very dangerous and can hurt a lot of people. I would only give it to someone I believe can have complete control of it. Wendy looked at him in awe. This power her father wanted to give her was very dangerous, but at the same time could make her even more powerful. Yet her father wanted to give it to her. He wanted to give her such amazing power. But the question was, could she handle it? 2-chan, do you really think that's me? Do you think I can handle such a dangerous power? She asked cutely. Naruto nodded. Yes, I do. I can't think of anyone else but you to handle this power. I believe you can master it better than I ever could. Anna and Grandini also believe so. And I know if she was here, Hinata will also say the same. We all believe in you, Wendy. However, I will not force you to accept this power. The choice is all yours, my daughter. He said. Wendy felt herself beam with joy. Her father believed in her, her mothers believed in her as well. They all believed she could handle the power and master it better than even her own father. She looks up at her father, a fiery passion in her eyes. I will do it, 2-chan. I promise to make you proud. Wendy shouted with passion. You already have, Wendy. And I know Hinata would be as well. He thought. Naruto then walked up and crouched in front of her. He then pushes the sphere of power into Wendy's chest and makes a few hand signs. Hake no Fuin Shiki, 8 trigrams seal. A symbol appears on Wendy's chest before it disappears as if it was never there. Wendy looked down at her chest confused, and a little disappointed. I didn't feel anything, Wendy said, unimpressed. Naruto just looked amused at the remark. That's a good thing. As a self-made seal master, I make it my job to make sure when I seal something, I make it as painless as possible. Especially, when it involves my precious, little princess. Wendy giggled. Naruto then stood up. Now I promise to help you work on that when you're older. So just forget about it for now. Wendy looked at him with her big, brown eyes. Promise. I promise. I never go back on my word, my chibiheim. Wendy smiled. Now let's go get something to eat. Your mothers must be worried about you. Yay! Little Wendy cheered excitingly before storming off ahead out of the forest. Naruto laughed as he chased after her. She is so much like you, Hinata-chan. I hope you smiling down upon us, my lovely moon queen. No matter how far you are, we will always be connected. Flashback End. Wendy smiled as she recalled the memory. It was one of the few good memories of her father that she could recall. She wondered why was it that she can only remember bits and pieces. Sure, it could be because she was really young, but she felt it was something very different. She feels like there was something really important that she was forgetting, but she could not put her finger on it. She decided to ask her father about something pertaining to Anna. Yeah, I remember now. It was a good memory of us. I don't really remember a lot, but I always held that one and a few others are really close to my heart. It was one of the few memories of you that I can actually recall. But what does this have to do with the orb you gave me? She said, but then she had a sudden realization about that orb. I remember when I saw the orb I felt a dark presence, and when I looked inside I saw a fox with 9 tails. Was that Kurama Gigi's chakra you gave me? Naruto nodded in confirmation. Hi, that was indeed Kurama's chakra. I knew regardless of how skilled you were, there was no way for you to complete your Dragonslayer training with the time you had. I wanted you to have an extra push to help you become stronger, and the chakra would activate to protect you. Wendy gave her father a deadpan look. Dad, I have been in some pretty dangerous situations for a while up till now. I think whatever seal you used was defective. Naruto just chuckled. Yeah, not exactly. You see, the seal was perfect, but the issue was the unforeseen consequences that came when mixing demon chakra with Dragonslayer magic. What do you mean? Well, before I explain, you have to understand something about your magic. What's that? Well, like any magic, Dragonslayer magic has its own risks when learning it. Wendy got worried. What kind of risks? The original purpose of dragon slaying magic was to give humans the power to fight alongside dragons during the Great War that occurred 400 years ago. We were soldiers that fought to protect our dragon brethren and were willing to put everything on the line to do so, even our very lives. I was one of those men and women. In fact, myself and Irene were the first of our kind. We were the ones that introduced the idea of Dragonslayer magic. We were called the Dragonslayer king and queen of our times. We thought we could change the world. We thought we could make it into a better place. But we never thought about the consequences of what our choices could make upon others and the world. Wendy was listening intently to the story, knowing something bad was coming up. It was during the war, we discovered there are consequences to learning Dragonslayer magic. The first is that if the person's body can't adapt to the power, then their body will slowly burn from overuse and eventually be destroyed from the inside out until they turn into nothing but dust and ashes. Wendy looked alarmed at the idea of seeing her friends disintegrate into ashes right before her eyes. It was probably not the first time her father saw it either. The second symptom was a Dragonslayer being overcome by their draconian half and turning into mindless beasts. These monsters had no sense of morale and killed everything and everyone in their way. There was no way to restore them, so we were forced to put them down. We lost a great many comrades to their inner beasts, and we could do nothing but end their suffering and mourn for the fact that we had a hand in their descent into madness. Okay, if she felt bad before, now Wendy felt terrible for her father. She could never imagine seriously hurting one of her comrades, regardless of the reasons. So the idea of having to kill them was so foreign to her that she could never consider doing something like that. Now her own father was forced to fight in a war he probably never wanted any part of, but also be forced to see several of his friends die, and have to kill many of them as the only way to them out of their misery. The kicker was that he was responsible for many of their lives ending because he helped create Dragonslayer magic, which added another load of guilt he had to carry along with his own descent into insanity. Honestly, it's a miracle her father was still able to even have a sensible conversation with her. But a cold dread filled her with what the third curse was, and she had a bad feeling she knew exactly what it was. 2chan, what was the third symptom? Naruto sighed. Well, the third symptom is something all Dragonslayers had to risk when learning. The more powerful your magic got, the more powerful a Dragonslayer you became. But this also caused changes to your personality. You became violent, more temperamental, and worst of all, bloodthirsty. The more blood you spilled, the worse the craving became. You will begin to thirst for it more and more until you literally bathe yourself in it to satisfy your thirst and will even eat your dragons to fuel you even more. Eventually, as time passes, your hands became claws, your feet became talons, your teeth became fangs, your skin became scales, you grew wings and a tail, and eventually, Naruto paused as he looked at his daughter, who was shell-shocked at what he was insinuating. Are you saying you become a D-dragon? She frighteningly exclaimed. Naruto nodded. That is the end result of learning Dragonslayer magic. You will become the very thing you hunt. The perfect case of irony. The same irony can apply to Devil Slayers. Naruto said, but kept the last words to himself. Wendy looked shocked that an actual human could become a dragon, but then she looked at her father. What about you? Me? I was already in the process of dragonification when I went to Zeref. Zeref merely accelerated the process and corrupted it to take on a much more demonic form. Dad, what does this have to do with me, though? I get that it's important to know about the Dragonslayer roots. But how does this affect me? Naruto looked at her sadly. It affects you in many ways, my dear. It's one of the reasons Grandini left you. Wendy's eyes widened. What? She whispered. She left because she needed to stop you from turning into a Dragonslayer. It's also the reason why you and the others were brought to this time period so that you could avoid the hardships of the What? Wendy screamed, interrupting her father from his explanation. Naruto looks at her, not at all surprised at the outburst. He honestly expected it, though much sooner. What do you mean, to this time period, Tu-chan? She asked quietly. Naruto sighed before looking at Wendy sadly. What I mean is that near the climax of the war, many of us were unsure if we would survive. So we made a plan to send young Dragonslayer to the future and hopefully, they could live a happy life and eventually grow strong enough to fight the remnants of the Dark Army, and Zeref if he ever became a threat to the world. Naruto sighed. Unfortunately, because of my psychotic episode, many of our worthy candidates were taken from this world prematurely. In the end, only 5 Dragonslayers made it to the future. These were you, Natsu, Gajeel, Sting, and Rogue. The day X777, the day you thought your dragons left you, was the day you actually arrived in this time period. Wendy just sat there, quietly digesting what she just heard. She's not from this period. She's from 400 years in the past. She would have called her father crazy, but a lot of things began to make more sense. When she first came under the care of Mistogen and Rubol, she couldn't read anything that was written and had to learn from scratch. She wondered why she had such a tough time when she remembered reading so well before. It was because she was used to reading a different language. This also brings to light an incident that happened with Natsu and Gajeel when Laxus tried to take over the guild. They were stuck, because of a rune wall that forbade anyone past 80 from going through. Natsu and Gajeel never understood why they couldn't get through. Even Fried was baffled by it. But now it makes sense. They were all from a different period. It all made sense. Hell, it explains why she felt some familiarity with Natsu and Gajeel when she first them. She knew them from the distant past. She wondered who Sting and Rogue are, but decided to question her father later and focus on what was on her mind now. If that's true, why don't any of us remember anything? It's because your minds were not mature enough to handle the time loop, and that affected some of your mental abilities, more especially your memories. It's why you only remember bits and pieces, or just a feeling that you should know something. How did we get to this time period? We used a creation of Zeref called an Eclipse Gate. However, to power if we needed the help of a celestial spirit mage. Fortunately, Anna-chan fit the bill perfectly. That surprised Wendy. Anna-chan was a celestial spirit mage? Naruto nodded. She was the greatest celestial spirit mage to ever walk the lands of Earthland. She was the matriarch of her family. She was my blonde bombshell. She was my wife, my Anna Heartfilia. Wendy choked on some air and her eyes widened as big as saucers. Wait, what? She screamed at her father. I thought her surname was Marvell, and that was where your name came from? Naruto shook her head. Good theory, but Marvell came from someone I owe a great debt to. Someone we both know very well in our lives. Wait, if Anna-chan was the matriarch of the family, then that means Lucy is why you're. Naruto nodded. Yeah, Lucy is the last of my descendants on her mother's side of the family. For simplicity's sake, you can just call her your older sister if you want. Her and one other person, but you don't need to know that until a bit later. The last thing I need is you blowing a fuss when you find out about my relationship with Anna and Irene. Naruto thought. For the second time, Wendy just stood shell-shocked at just she heard. She had a sister. She has a sister, and it's Lucy. She never thought one of the people she was closest to in her guild would be related to her. She wondered if she had any other siblings, but decided to question that later. But there was something that was bugging her. "San, what does this have to do with my power?" The Kyuubi chakra had some unforeseen effects on your Dragonslayer magic. Instead of being separate from your magic, it combined with your draconian half and became something else. Wendy looked concerned. "How did this affect my magic?" "Well, the plus side is that it destroyed the dragon seed inside of you that grows to cause your dragon fiction. The downside is that it allows you to turn into a dragon at will. You are now a 4th generation Dragonslayer like myself and your Aunt Irene." Wendy's eyes nearly popped out of her head. "What? You heard me. Eventually you'll be able to turn into a dragon just like I can and like my mates. I have access to a dragon form?" Wendy asked, still finding the idea of being able to turn into a dragon hard to believe. Naruto shook his head. "Not right away. Without proper training and obtaining the forms of dragon force and beyond, then you'll never be able to reach it." Wendy held her head down. "Did you know this would happen to me?" she asked. "No, I didn't, and I wish I could take my decision back." Wendy looked up and gave her father a blank stare. "Why?" "Because I did not want you to follow the same path as me. I wanted you to be better than me. And here I am turning you to the same thing as me. So I feel responsible for causing you future hardships, because of my foolish choice." Wendy walked up and brought her father into a hug. Naruto was surprised but returned the hug. "It's not your fault," she whispered. He then looks at her. "What?" Wendy then smiles at him. "It's not your fault, father. You could not have known about the dragon fiction, and there's no way you could have known the effects of my Dragonslayer magic Kurama's chakra would have on me. So please don't continue to place the blame on your shoulders. I'm partly responsible for accepting the orb. I knew the risks and took them. You believed I could handle it, and I know I can do it, but I need your help to do so. So please help me master this power, Daddy." Naruto continues to look at his daughter in awe before standing up and kissing her forehead. "Thanks my chibi-hime," he said. "No problem, Chan," she said as she blushed. "So are you ready for the challenge?" "I was born ready." Naruto smirked. "Okay, there is something you need to know." She sat back down. "Now every Dragonslayer has a draconian half. However, each one is different depending on a number of factors." Wendy tilted her head. "What type of factors?" "Well, stuff like the dragon that taught you, what your actual personality is like, all of this contributes to how the draconian half will act. How you and your draconian half act towards one another will vary from person to person. Some get along great with the gecko, while others take some time to get along. But even if they get along, trying to fully merge is a very difficult task. This will be especially hard for you. Not only do you have to worry about Kurama's chakra mixing, but also your inner darkness." "My inner darkness?" Wendy repeated. "It's something everyone has, especially Dragonslayer. The best example would be Jinchuriki." Wendy's eyes narrow at that comparison, knowing this will be bad news. "You see, because of their unfavorable childhoods, Jinchuriki tend to gain a very unhealthy hatred of the world. However, many like myself tried to bottle this up, which led to it gaining its own consciousness in the shape of inner darkness. Our true selves. So not only did my Gigi's chakra mix with my draconian half but also my inner darkness," Wendy said. "Yes, and it gets stronger with your negative thoughts." "My negative thoughts?" Wendy asked. What negative thoughts could affect her inner darkness? "Your saddens over you mothers." Wendy stayed quiet at this. "You're the envy of your fellow guild members. Your feelings of being the weakest link to your team. You feel jealous of how your fellow Dragonslayers are far more powerful than you are." Wendy flinched at this. "You frustrations of how some of the members treat you like a child, and even how your fellow exceed partner overprotect you." Wendy flinched again before looking down. "Finally your anger and hatred towards me and Rubol." Wendy snapped her head upwards and was about to protest until Naruto stopped her. "Wendy, you know it's true. You felt anger and grief for Rubol leaving you. And you resent me because even though you know why I left, you feel like I abandoned you." Wendy was about to speak, but stayed silent, knowing a lot of what Naruto said was true. "Now since every draconian side is different, I can't tell you how yours will act. All I can tell you is be ready for anything, and don't reject her. She is part of you and you must accept her. Or else you'll never complete your Dragonslayer training." Wendy nodded. "I understand." Naruto sighed before getting dinner ready for the pair. "Tomorrow morning we will begin your trial." Naruto began. "Your trial to obtain Dragon Force." Wendy nodded, determined to pass tomorrow's trial, whatever it may be. Next day, Naruto was explaining the basics of Dragon Force to Wendy. There are several ways to achieve and activate Dragon Force. You can eat a large quantity of magic energy, preferably your element. The second way is for you to go through years of training to activate it at will, which we don't have at the moment. The last way is to kill a dragon. What? Wendy screamed. Naruto didn't even flinch at her shock. You heard me. You must kill a dragon to get dragon force. How else do you think the previous Dragonslayers did so? I did the same, but I have found a solution for you. One I developed during the war. But how? She asked, really interested in her father's solution. I will summon an ethereal dragon from your subconscious. Which means I will be summoning your draconian side to the outside, but it's only the portion that holds onto your dragon force powers. Defeat it and the form will be yours. Wendy took a deep breath before giving her father a determined look. I am ready to fight. Naruto nodded. Be ready for anything, Wendy. Naruto then performed several hand signs. A magic seal appeared on Naruto's hand and one on Wendy's chest. Suddenly Wendy was enveloped in a magic aura before it grew until it was the towering over the two. The ethereal energy ripped itself before jumping to the far side opposite Wendy and began to take a form with wings, claws, and tails. The ethereal dragon had taken the shape of Grandini. The fake Grandini growled at Wendy, ready to fight little girl? Wendy growled in defiance, bring it on, fake, Ost. 2 steps from Hell Archangel. The fake dragon roared pushing Wendy away, but she managed to hold her ground. She outstretches her arms to reveal 2 seals on her wrists. The seals glowed before 2 weapons pop out. Both were short swords with nearly identical designs. Both had a black handle with gold accents. The center had the yin-yang symbol. The only difference was the color of the blades. One was white as an eggshell, while the other was black as charcoal with red accents. These were the twin swords, Bakuya and Kanshu. They were one of her mother's personal weapons that her father trained her to use. Veneer, arms, armor. Wendy then threw the 2 blades at the fake. She then disappears in a blur with Fupo. The dragon looks insulted and pushes the blades away with a sigh. However, the blades disappear. The fake dragon looks up to see Wendy hovering in the air with both swords in hand. She channels her wind element casing ethereal blades to extend from the swords and she shouts, Air X slash. The attack makes contact with the dragon's head making it reel back in pain. It growled in retaliation, Tenryu no Kajizum, Sky Dragon's Claw, Tenryu no Saiga, Crushing Fang. Wendy manages to avoid the first attack and uses Kaden to block the second attack. However, the force was enough to send back to the ground. Wendy quickly recovers and then sends the blades flying again. However, the blades split off into several copies of themselves. Wendy summons 3 wind clones. Then all 4 Wendy disappear in a blur of wind. The blades continue to circle around the fake, angering it to no end. You miserable hatchling. Do you think cheap tricks like this will scare me? Fight me, you blasted coward. The fake roars pushing the blades away. However, one of 4 Wendys appears in front of the fake and shouts, Solar Flare. The fake wails from the burning sensation in its eyes. Wendy then disappears again, then all 4 Wendy appear all around the fake with the blades in their hands. The 4 identical Dragonslayers descend and attack the blind dragon. X slash. Double air slash. Rolling air slash. Overedge slash. The fake roars in pain from the multiple attacks. It tries to strike all of them, but only manages to hit one clone while all her failing does is hit the trees and vegetation around it. Wendy and her clones dismiss their weapons and attack again. Tenryu no Kajizum, Tenryu no Yokugeki, Sky Dragon's Wing Attack, Tenryu no Saiga. The dragon wails once more in pain as it was pushed back once again. The 3 drop to the ground in front of the dragon and attack in unison. Tenryu no Tatsumaki. The 3 sky tornadoes join together to form a massive tornado heading straight for the fake Tatsumaki. The fake growls in anger as it finally regains its vision. How dare she? This little brat thinks it will fall so easily? It will not just stand like some frightened hatchling. It's time this learns its place. You arrogant bitch. You think I will be so easy to fall? Time for you to fall. The fake roars before inhaling a large amount of air before yelling, Tenryu no Tatsumaki. The fake launches its own massive tornado. The 2 storms of nature collided creating a massive explosion of wind that takes the shape of an even bigger tornado going into the sky. Wendy's clones all disappear and both the original Wendy and the fake dragon suffer damage from the explosion. As the winds dispel, both Wendy and the fake are inhaling all of the excess winds from the blast. Both quickly yell, Tenryu no Hoko. The 2 launch their signature attacks. The 2 begin to struggle in their beam struggle as neither is willing to submit to the other. However, the fake plays dirty and sends its tails burrows underground and rising right below Wendy. This causes Wendy to lose her balance and lose concentration on her attacks. The fake dragon smiles evilly and pushes its roar at full blast. Wendy crosses her arms in a feeble attempt to block the attack. But the attempt was futile. The roaring tornado hit Wendy dead on and causes Wendy to release a painful scream as she sent back through several trees and rocks for at least a few miles. A huge dust cloud obscures the vision of the damage caused by the fake's attack. The fake roars in victory. Ha. See that you are worthless hatchling. You thought you could defeat me? You are weak, a pitiful excuse for a Dragonslayer. You are not worthy of the dragon force power. The dragon continually mocks Wendy as Naruto just continued to look on. It wanted nothing more than to rip that stupid gecko's head, but knows that is Wendy's job and must have faith Wendy will succeed. Come on Wendy, I know it will take more than this to keep you down. You have survived worse than this from our spars. You are worthy of the title Dragonslayer, my dear. Now show me, show this fake, show your inner dragon that you are worthy of dragon force. Naruto thought, encouraging Wendy to rise up Wendy Marvel. Wendy was in pain. She felt pain all over her body from the multiple cuts and lacerations all around her body. She painfully gets up and notices that she is bleeding profusely as a small puddle of blood is forming under her body. So much pain, and I can barely stay conscious. Tu-chan was not kidding when he said that the fake will not be pulling any punches. Wendy flinches more and more as she slowly gets up, but Wendy is finally on her feet, albeit shakingly. I have come too far to let some piece of my subconscious get in my way, she mutters. Wendy casts a shozen all over her body. She knows this will cost her some magic, but it is a necessary cost. She sighs after managing to shrink the more severe lacerations to at least become more tolerable. Wendy then begins to absorb the magical energy from the air itself and began to transform. She looked forward with a determined glint in her eyes. Time to beat down that arrogant fake dragon. Suddenly the other two sense an immense amount of magical energy. Both squint to see Wendy in drive mode. What the hell? Where did this girl get all this power from? Screamed the fake in her head. Naruto was all smiles. That's the way. Show that fake what it means to be a Dragonslayer. Fairy Tale Ost. Dragon Slayer theme. Wendy summons 2 wind clones and unseals another weapon. A black bow, Hinata's other signature weapon. It's time to end this fight, she roars. Wendy then prepares her stance as an ethereal arrow appears on shooting arm, arrow barrage. Wendy fires an arrow that multiplies into hundreds of arrows as the 2 wind clones disappear. The fake dragon is unimpressed and swats away all the arrows. Suddenly the wind clones appear above the fake dragon and begin to distract with attacks. Tenryu no Shippo, Sky Dragon's Tail. Tenryu no Yokugeki. The 2 attacks land their mark and cause the fake to hiss in pain. Before it could retaliate, the real Wendy appears right in front of it with a glowing arrow on her bow. Take this. Wendy screams as Eternano surrounds the tip of her arrow, and she shouts, arrow shockwave. The arrow is launched with a massive aura around it. The arrow lands dead on the fake's chest and deep within it. The fake roars at the immense pain it feeling. It's distracted. Attack. The 2 clones attack again. One clone charges her energy to her leg, while the other has her energy to her arm. Wendy dismisses her bow and charges her energy to both her arms. All 3 shout, Tenryu no Tenku Haya, Sky Dragon's first sky arrow, Tenryu no Kusho, Sky Dragon's vacuum palm, Tenryu no Kuakisho, Sky Dragon's vacuum wall palm. The 3 attacks land around the area where the arrow landed, and cause the fake to roar in pain and anger. Enough. It screams, sending all 3 tumbling to the ground. I will not be bested by some lonesome child. Wendy and her clones glare definitely. She looks at her clones. Let's end this, she says, and her 2 clones nod. One of the 2 clones gets behind and shouts, ill arms. Ill veneer, ill armor, before dispersing. The 2 Wendys then shout, Tenryu no Namiroshi. The wave tornado surrounds the fake, but she manages to fly above it, but receives some damage from the attack. The fake then begins charging her attack. Wendy surrounds her feet with wind and begins to slowly float off the ground. Tobu, fly. Wendy mutters before she pushes herself to the sky. A spell she created thanks to her father and being inspired by Natsu when he did the same with fire as his thrusters. She charges her energy into the palm of her hands. The fake mocks, you think you will reach me? Wendy just smirks. Not alone. The fake is confused until she sees the clone below charging an attack, Metsuryu Ogi, Shoha Tenkuzan. The beam hit Wendy, but instead of damaging her, it sends her like a speeding bullet to the fake. The fake's eyes widen and realize she won't make it. Wendy takes the last of the sky drill and adds it to her attack. Time to end this. This fight is mine, she roars, Tenryu no Rasengan. The attack lands on the area the arrow was lodged. Wendy pushes forward and rips right through the dragons as her attack pushes through the fake. Wendy lands on the ground, panting. That's that, she mutters. She looks up to see the fake screaming and writhing around in pain from the hole in its chest. End of theme. It continues to roar in pain as she falls to the ground. The fake continues to wither in pain but eventually begins to calm down. It looks to see Wendy staring at it. Waiting to see her next move, Wendy receives a shock as the dragon gives her a smile. A smile reminiscent of her draconian mother. Soon the dragon begins to disappear. Before it loses its form, it mutters to Wendy, "Well done, Dragonslayer." Before disappearing completely, the tendrils of energy then make a beeline for Wendy and re-enter her body. She feels a burning sensation and screams in pain as she is enveloped in a flash of light. As the light dies down, she pants on her hands and knees. Huff, huff, that was painful, huff. She mutters before standing up and noticing something. She looks all over her body and sees she has changed. She looks at herself and sees that she is completely different. Her arms were more claw-like. She had several white feathers going around her wrists. Her arms and legs were covered in more visible scales. They gave her skin a pale complexion. Her hair had become slightly shaggy and completely pink. On her back were 2 small wings. Her cheeks had more defined whisker marks, and her eyes were now slitted and blood red. Wendy had done it. She had achieved dragon force. She hears clapping and looks to see her father with a giant smile. "Congrats, my Chibi-Heim. You now have access to dragon force." Wendy beams at her father. "That was a lot harder than I expected. I'm surprised I didn't die." Naruto chuckled. "1. I have been training you. 2. I would have intervened if it went too far. Finally, your dragon side does want to kill you. It wants you and by extension it to be the strongest it can possibly be. So it will only make that fake dragon powerful enough to push you to your limits, and not kill you." Wendy was about to retort before she felt dizzy. The whole world was spinning, and suddenly the world goes dark as she faints. "Well, looks like you're about to meet her. Be careful with your darkness, or it will consume you without you knowing." Wendy looks around and is awestruck by the beauty she is surrounded by. She especially likes the clear sky and beautiful vegetation around her. "This place is gorgeous, but where am I? My dad would have told me if we were leaving. This doesn't feel like a dream. At least not exactly." Then an idea pops in her head as she looks around. "Is this my inner world?" she asks out loud. "Indeed it is, Wendy Marvell. Or should I say our inner world?" A dark voice said behind her. Wendy turns around and was shocked to see an exact copy of herself, except she had dark, raven hair and red slitted eyes. The sclera of eyes was completely black, giving her a very sinister look. "Hello Wendy, I am your darkness. The true you," she said mockingly. "Hello, nice to meet you, darkness." She bowed politely. Dark Wendy face faulted. "I come all menacing and that is all you have to say?" she asked incredulously. "Well, I am not about to be an asshole to you, because that means I have a problem with myself, and the only problem I have with myself is my cup size." Dark Wendy groaned in annoyance. Wendy just looked confused. "Why are you groaning? You're me, so you should all this." Dark Wendy just continued staring at Wendy before chuckling. "Yeah, I guess I should." Wendy decided to ask her dark half some questions. "So what exactly are you? Besides being my inner darkness, and a crap ton of other stuff?" "Well, like your father," Dark Wendy began before she was interrupted. "Our father." Wendy corrected. Dark Wendy sighed. "Right, our father." Wendy beamed. "I am the fox's power along with your dragon mentality and inner darkness wrapped up into one being. However, your inner darkness doesn't just include your anger and hatred. It also includes your lustful emotions." "My what emotions?" Wendy asked in confusion. "I know about how you always considered yourself weak, the envy you have against your nakama, the anger you hold against your father for leaving you, and the hatred for what that bastard village did to him." Wendy just listen, knowing full of all of this from last night's chat. "I also know about your little crush on that special boy and how you love to get your claws on him and have your way with him like a little toy." Dark Wendy said, licking her lips and giggling perversely. Wendy just glowed into atomic levels of red. Was she that late of her pervert, or did her father have something to do with it? However, Dark Wendy put a squash to that theory. "Before you think your father had nothing to do this. You have always had these thoughts just like anyone else. You just suppress them, but a dragon knows what it wants. Especially in a potential mate or mates." Dark Wendy chuckled again at the end. Wendy shook her to rid of the blush she was having and get back to the serious questions. "Okay, my dad said that you are different depending on what dragon taught me and the person I am." Dark Wendy nodded in confirmation. "So my question is, what do you want?" "What do you want from me?" "From us?" Wendy asked, not sure how to phrase that question. Dark Wendy hummed in thought. Odd question, indeed. "What do I want? Well, I am you. I am your inner desire, Wendy. You that knows exactly what you truly want." Dark Wendy thinking of how to answer this. "I want to be the best we can be. I want to make our parents proud of us. And I want to get the boy we both want. Dark Wendy looked dead straight into the eyes of Wendy. I want all that as well, just taken up to 11. Wendy then looked straight at her dark self. She needed to ask something that has been on her since she was told of her. Do you plan to take over? I will fight you if I have to. Wendy said. Dark Wendy rose a curious eyebrow. I thought you said you acknowledge me as a part of yourself, she asked in confusion, wondering what she was thinking. Wendy nodded in confirmation. I do, but that doesn't mean I want you to take control and have your way with everyone around me, Wendy said with a fierce glare. Dark Wendy continued to look at her before bursting out in laughter. Ha. You really are an odd one. You know that, right? Wendy just shrugged in response. Considering who our father is, what do you expect? Dark Wendy nodded. Too true. He also said you hold the power of my dragon form. Is this also true? I hold that power and your Sky Dragon Queen mode. Wendy nodded again. What do I need to do to get it? Dark Wendy sighed before answering. It's not as simple as me giving you permission to use it. Right now the power is way too much for you to handle. Even if we did cooperate, you still wouldn't be able to have full control over the form. Elemental mode is out of the question until you can master Drive mode and Dragon Force first. So it's like the Jinchuriki situation. We may cooperate, but my body and mind still can't handle the stress. Especially if I let myself go off into a berserker rage? Dark Wendy nodded. Correct Wendy, while you are different from what I expected, that does not mean we are buddy-buddy. I still want to crush all those who hurt us and our families. I want all the pleasures we can get from the world, and I want to become the strongest Dragonslayer of our age. Wendy looked slightly disappointed at this. Does that mean you aren't willing to cooperate somewhat? Dark Wendy shook her head. Oh, I am willing to cooperate, since if you die I go with you. But make no mistake, I want you to lose control so I can hijack and run rampant to kill all those against us. What about the seal our father placed on you and Kurama's power? Dark Wendy just shook her head and explained that the seal was lost after the merging. All it was doing was holding her back, but that ended when she did her trial for Dragon Force. Wendy then thought about a compromise between her and her dark half. How about this? You along with my dad, help me control our power. You lend me your power and you get some control at the time I am using it, but I am still in the driver's seat. Dark Wendy hummed in thought. The deal was intriguing, but something was bugging her. Your offer is interesting, but I have to ask. What do I get from this? You get your wish of coming out and causing pain to our enemies or those who deserve it. Plus I prefer this than having to fight you for control. You are me, and I want every part of me to get along with myself. Dark Wendy just continued to look at her. I may cause you to lose control. She retorted, maybe, but something is telling me I will lose control whether you are involved or not. Like Dad told us, Jinchuriki tend to lose control on some occasions until they are able to master their power. Even then they are prone to have some episodes. I may be tricking you. Wendy just shook her head. You would not have gone this far for a lie. We are not that kind of person. We are both straightforward, even if you are a lot more complicated. Wendy looked straight at Dark Wendy. I want us to be friends because we are both Wendy Marvell. We are the two halves of her. You helped push me when I was feeling down and lonely. You were the one that helped me get through those tough days without our parents. Wendy then shocked her dark half by bowing to her. So thank you for everything. She then looked up and stuck her hand with a huge smile. Friends? Dark Wendy hesitated, but shook her hand, nonetheless. An unlikely alliance. I hope you won't regret this, Wendy. Wendy just shook her head. I know, I won't. Thanks for giving this a chance. Dark Wendy rolled her eyes. Whatever. Wendy soon began to fade. Dark Wendy smirked. Time for you to go back to our daddy. Wendy blushed before giggling. Yeah. See you soon, she said before fading away. Dark Wendy just sighed. I hope you're right about your decision, Wendy. You better not regret this. Your emotions are tied to your magic. If you lose yourself to your sorrow or anger, you will automatically tap into my power. So if you lose control, that would be all on you and I would have nothing to do with it, except giving you the power, or in some cases you taking it subconsciously before I take control to have some fun. Wendy woke up back in her camp. She looked at herself to find herself back to normal. She looked around to find her father making dinner. He looked up and smiled at her. Welcome back, my Chibiheim. So tell me, how was your conversation with your inner darkness? He asked. Wendy explained everything that happened. What Dark Wendy was like, how she explained what she was, and finally the deal she made with her. Naruto listened to all of this before patting her head. I am proud of you, my Chibiheim. You handled that maturely, and wisely. Like a true Dragonslayer should. Wendy beamed at the praise. But your dark side was right, you will have to be careful when using her power or else you will lose control. And if you do that, you may end up hurting someone close to you. Wendy nodded. Naruto then served the 2 dinners as he explained what the rest of the plan was. For the remainder of the training period, I will be training you so you can use Dragon Force at will. Next, I will focus on your mentality so that you can control your emotions and be able to repel any mental attacks from your opponents. Finally, we will see if you have the Byakugan, and then train you on your darker powers. Wendy looked thoughtful, before asking something she has been contemplating for a while. Dad, I want you to teach me to be a shinobi. Naruto looked surprised at the request. What? He asked, unsure if he heard right. Wendy looked at him with a determined glint in her eyes. I want to be like you and Oka-sama. I want to understand what both of you went through as ninjas. Naruto looked unsure. Are you sure? This will make your training even more intense. Wendy nodded in confirmation. He could see the fire in her eyes. She was really determined about this. She was not taking no for an answer. Naruto just shook his head in amusement. She really is just like you too, Hinata. Anna. Well, we have done similar things to shinobi training, such as control of your magic, basic info of storage seals, and finally helping you create your wind clones. I will just have to make some additions to our training regimen, but I think I can make it work. Naruto looked at Wendy with a serious expression. I will make you into a shinobi, Wendy. You will be a ninja under my tutelage. The second shinobi mage in all of Earthland. Are you ready for this, my daughter? Wendy just gave him a cheeky grin. Hell yeah. Naruto smirked. Then tomorrow, we begin the final part of your training for the GMC. End Chapter 8.